Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting for November 3rd. I would call this meeting to order and ask, please, for the introductory comments.
Before we begin the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to the district court.
Thank you. Now we'll proceed to a roll call of commissioners present. Please be reminded to use your microphone so people participating virtually can hear you. Thank you. And we'll proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Fox.
Present.
Duell.
Here.
McKay.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Bill Johnson.
Here.
Blick. We believe that Mr. Blick is... There we go. Thank you, sir. Nix.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Warren.
Here.
Joe Johnson.
Here.
Mile.
Present.
Hartman.
Here.
Cunningham.
Here.
Williams Bay.
Here.
I show all 14 members present.
Thank you. You've received minutes of previous 2 meetings. We'll start with the October 6th meeting. I show that Rob Hartman was absent. Any additions, changes, or I would entertain a motion?
Move for approval.
Move for approval.
I have a motion for approval. I'll take Joe Johnson as the second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Hearing none, motion passes, abstention 1. Motion passes 13-0-1. You've also received minutes from the October 20th meeting. Any additions, changes, or I'd entertain a motion?
Move we approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Green, second from Commissioner Warren. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And I showed Joe Johnson arrived late and would be ineligible to vote. Joe, can I have your abstention?
I abstain.
Okay, motion passes 13-0-1. Next, we'll run through the agenda to identify any items that we can take on consent. Item 2.1, subdivision 2022-00039 at Maple and 167th Street West. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone in the assembly area present want to hear this case? Anyone participating virtually who wants to hear this case? We will take that on consent. Item 2.2, subdivision case 2022-00041, located near 23rd Street South and 263rd Street West. Does anyone on the commission participating here or virtually want to hear this case? Anyone in chambers want to hear this case? Anyone participating virtually want to hear this case? We'll take item 2.2 on consent. Item 2.3, subdivision case 2022-00055, 79th Street South and 143rd Street East. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone participating in chambers want to hear this case? Anyone participating virtually who wants to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take item 2.3 on consent. Item 2.4, subdivision 2022-00056 near Central and 167th Street West. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone participating in the chambers want to hear this case? Anyone participating virtually want to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, was there additional information that was supplied on this case?
2.4. Rachel Brook Estates. Neil, did we have something added to this case?
I sent the subdivision committee members a sketch of an exhibit presented by the applicant showing the public right-of-way connection. And that meets the requirements of the subdivision regulations and of County Public Works.
Thank you.
Okay. Does this change your idea of wanting to hear it, Bill? No, I don't. Okay. All right, and no one virtually wants to hear this case? We will take it on consent.
Move that we approve items 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Green, second from Commissioner Miles. Any discussion from the commission? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Items are approved, 14-0. We have one vacation item, 2022-00031 Webb Road and 13th Street North. Anyone on the commission who would like to hear this case? Anyone in chambers who would like to hear this case? Anyone participating virtually who would like to hear this case? Hear none? Any discussion, or I would entertain a motion?
Second.
Motion, Commissioner McKay, second, Commissioner Foster. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 14-0. We are just really cooperative today. Don't speak too soon. Yeah, knock on wood. Public hearing item 4.1, conditional use 2022-00041 near Central and Hoover. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone in chambers want to hear this case? Anyone participating virtually want to hear this case? We will take that item on consent. Item 4.2, conditional use 2022-00042, 13th Street and Ridge Road Food Court. Anyone on the commission, or food truck, anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone in chambers want to hear this case? Was that a hand up, Lonnie? Okay, thought you, not your side of town. Anyone participating virtually want to hear this case? We will take 4.2 on consent. Item 4.3, we will hear this case because a partial part of the case is being presented as a denial. 4.4, Plan Unit Development 2022-00019 near Harry and 127th Street East. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone present want to hear this case? Yes. All right.
Yes.
See, we're very cooperative today, a lot of us. We will hear 4.4. Item 4.5, zoning case 2022-000. Oh, and do we have agent or applicant for PUD 2022-00018 present? Thank you. And do we have the agent or applicant for 2022's 00019? Okay, thank you. Zoning case 2022-00055 and conditional use 2022-00040. This is at Broadway and 47th Street South. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone present in chambers want to hear this case? I saw a nod back there. Was that, no, okay, thank you. I'm watching closely. Anyone participating virtually want to hear this case?
Yes, we'd like to hear the case.
Okay, 4.5, we have someone virtual. We'll hear this case. 4.6, zoning case 2022-00050. Oh, and do we have an agent or applicant for 4.5? This is Broadway and 47th Street South. Here, okay, thank you. Item 4.6, zoning case 2022-00056, Maple and 167th Street West. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone in chambers want to hear this case? And anyone participating virtually want to hear this case? We can take item 4.6 on consent.
Move that we approve items 4.1, 4.2, and 4.6.
I have a motion from.
Second.
Second goes to Rob Hartman. Rob, is that what I said? Rob. Any discussion on this item? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes 14-0. We have no BZA agenda today, so we'll begin with a staff report on item 4.3, please.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. Philip Zevenbergen with Planning Staff. PUD 2218 is a request to amend PUD number 78, the Vassar Apartments PUD, in order to expand the area that is encompassed within the PUD for the purposes of expanding a custom zoning classification to allow for additional multifamily development, as well as a limited number of commercial uses on one of the parcels. The property is located, as you can see on the screen, several blocks east of North Hillside and south of 17th Street. Some of it encompasses area north of 16th Street, and then two of the parcels are south of 16th Street. If this is approved, it would expand the area of the existing PUD from 0.68 acres to 5.4 acres. The existing PUD is this area right here on the northwest corner of 16th and Vassar. That is what is encompassed right now. It is developed with a multifamily apartment complex, one building with custom setbacks to allow it to have 0-foot setbacks along 16th and Vassar, as well as a parking reduction to a 0.8 parking spaces per dwelling unit ratio. These similar type of development standards are being requested throughout the amended area, in addition to some minor modifications on a parcel-to-parcel basis, and we will walk through that. For your information, this area here, it's delineated in the images of your staff report. The area right here, this L shape, that's parcel 1. This piece of land here between Fairmount and Holyoke is parcel 2. The green shaded area, or the MF29 zoned property south of 16th Street, that's parcel 3. And the yellow shaded area, or the TF3 zoned portion south of 16th Street, is parcel 4. So when we go through the different parcel descriptions, that is where it applies. And I tried to, in the staff report, indicate places north of 16th Street and places south of 16th Street. The 4 parcels that would be developed in this, if it is approved, have a mixture of current zoning of TF3, MF29, and the brown shaded areas on the screen are B multifamily. The current development on parcels 1 and 2 is a mixture of single family, 2-family, and multifamily development, in addition to that PUD zoning as we discussed earlier. 2 parcels within here, these hatched, they're single-family structures and they're historic structures. They're on the National Historic Register. They're the Holyoke Cottage and the Fairmount Cottage. We'll go dive in a little bit deeper about the impact on the historic properties later on in the presentation. We won't cover those details now. Property south of 16th Street on the MF29 zone property, it's 1 structure. It's a former place of worship, and it was allowed to have a daycare. In the past, it had a conditional use approved for a daycare. And it also has associated parking. The TF3 zone properties are a mixture of single-family and 2-family residential structures at this time. At your desk, you have a copy of some feedback we got via writing for your review. I also emailed that out to all of you prior this week for your review ahead of the meeting. In addition, you have a small packet regarding the development standards of the PUD. The applicant received the staff report, and this was a response to their staff recommendation. I will walk through this document when we get to the point of the recommendation so that this information is more fresh in your mind. Some of the information we're going to just briefly touch on in the presentation is based off of what was submitted in the application, even though now the applicant has, based on staff recommendation, is looking to potentially modify the request in order to seek approval on a portion of the PUD. Okay, to dive in here, let's talk about parcels 1 and 2. Again, they are north of 16th Street. In general, the custom development standards that they're asking for primarily applies to the setbacks and the parking. Again, they're looking to mimic what was allowed in PUD 78, which is 0-foot setbacks along the front of the property and any street side, and then reduce setbacks to a 5-foot setback on any adjoining parcel, both on the side or the rear. So looking to maximize the buildable area on the property. That is consistent with what is in PUD 78 at this time. In general, the density they're asking for is in line with what is allowed in B multifamily, which is what is currently zoned, which is 75.1 dwelling units an acre. Parcel 1 is asking for 82.5. And my understanding is, Paul, if you go to the aerial image, PUD 78 has an apartment building on it right now. Just north of it is also an apartment building right now. So really the only developable land in parcel 1 is this piece of land right here. And based on the size of it, in order to accomplish the number of dwelling units they're looking at, they actually had to, on that size of land, they had to increase the density a little bit to accomplish it. Something very similar happened a couple blocks down with a PUD in this area earlier this year, where on a smaller portion of a parcel, they asked for an increase in density to mimic the type of development happening elsewhere within the PUD. For parcels 3 and 4, they're looking to do something a little bit different, knowing it's a little bit away from the higher intensity transitional area that is north of 16th Street. They are originally requesting a height of 45 feet, which would be allowed in MF29. So again, parcel 3 would allow that already right now. They're still asking for a reduction in setback. That is discussed. Generally, you're going to have a front setback of 10 feet. So especially when you think about the properties fronting the park, they're not going to be right on the sidewalk. Those buildings will be set back just a little bit. In addition to some reduced setbacks on the side and the rear properties from the abutting lots to the south. Providing a little bit more setback than parcels 1 and 2, but less than what the current zoning would allow. Signage would be what's allowed in B multifamily, and the way the sign code is written, MF18, MF29, and B multifamily all have the same regulation. There's no distinction between those. Staff has no issue with that. Part of staff's recommendation and is agreed upon by the applicant is to not allow LED or electronic message center signage. And that if they want to in the future, that would have to be approved by an amendment versus just an administrative adjustment. And that if approved on parcels 3 and 4 south of 16th Street, that all lighting be indirectly lighted versus internally illuminated. Indirectly lighted would be like an exterior light shining at it versus it being illuminated from the interior of the sign, illuminated out. So you have indirect lighting being pointed at it versus lighting coming from within it. And again, the applicant has agreed to that part of staff recommendation. Regarding the proposed uses, parcels 1 and 2 what is allowed now is then be multifamily, which is multifamily residential development. They are looking to add a limited number of commercial uses, specifically on parcel 2, and related to like office uses. They're requesting personal care and personal improvement services, which would be like a nail salon, a barber, dry cleaning, a tailor, things of that nature, licensed massage therapies in there. And those definitions are in your staff report as well. We'll get into the nitty gritty of how that breaks down when we get to the recommendation section. Parcels 3 and 4, they were also requesting initially a significant number of uses in addition to just multifamily. They had allowed it in B multifamily, but that also includes some medical facilities and things of that nature. One thing that they're requesting overall within this is to allow short-term rental. That term, as those of you on the Advanced Plans Committee have been going through this, is not a defined term in our zoning code at this point. And so they actually did define it, and that's in the document on your desk. Which they are allowed to do in a PUD if it is not a defined term in the zoning code. They can define a term to a certain use within the PUD to be governed in such a fashion. In general, a short-term rental would be if you have a structure and you rent it for longer than a week, it's just considered a rental. So more or less coming in line with something like an Airbnb or VRBO, and they defined it like that within the PUD. Overall, regarding the uses that would be permitted and some of the development standards, staff is recommending denial of parcels 3 and 4. Again, those are the parcels that are south of 16th Street. Our primary concern is it is no surprise and it is no new information that development north of 16th Street, between 16th and 17th Street, has been in a state of transition. There's been a significant amount of investment into higher density multifamily, where a lot of the current type of development that is north of 16th Street does not maximize the amount of density that its current zoning actually allows. B multifamily allows 75.1 dwelling units an acre, and what you often see north of 16th Street is more medium level density of a fourplex or maybe a duplex. Here and there, you're going to have a standard kind of apartment building. But what we're seeing more often, especially to the east, is them taking advantage of more land and creating higher density residential around the university. There was another PUD just recently approved that did allow some limited number of commercial uses as well, knowing that there are commercial uses already existing along 17th Street as well. And so in regards to the development standards and some of the uses north of 16th Street, staff is generally in agreement with what they're proposing. There's a couple nuances which we'll get into towards the end. Our primary concern was the development south of 16th Street. If you go back to the zoning map, the primary zoning is TF3 two-family residential with low density single or two-family structures that are no more than 2 stories tall. You do have the one instance in MF29, which was approved in 2018. The multifamily development that was intended for that site never came to fruition. Currently, it is a 2-story structure that was a former place of worship, more like a community facilities type building and not multifamily residential. And so our concern is by recommending approval of anything south of 16th Street now could set a precedent for the type of development that we're seeing north of 16th Street start encroaching into a fairly contiguous low-density residential development south of 16th Street. And if you open that door, it could set a precedent for future approvals in the for other types of applications coming in. And then you begin to, again, ask the question of when does it stop? 16th Street has kind of been the dividing line up until this point. This has now been a request south of 16th Street. And based on the character of the neighborhood and the intensity of the uses that they were requesting, that is why staff is recommending denial of the PUD south of 16th Street. For some of these items in your staff report, I'm going to wait to go over them just in general with the recommendation document. Regarding parking, they are asking for the same parking reduction, which would be a 0.8 parking space per dwelling unit ratio, which is permitted on PUD 78. Other PUDs in the area have asked for similar parking reductions, and those have been approved. The general rationale is the proximity to transit, which is on Hillside and 17th, as well as throughout the WSU campus. There's been studies across the country showing that there's been less vehicular ownership for college students or those who live near universities. In addition to the opportunity of other types of modes of transportation, whether it be e-bikes or scooters or things that could be readily available in the area. This portion of the Fairmount neighborhood has sidewalks already installed. Every street, at least going to the university, every street along the perimeter of this PUD has sidewalks, which actually makes it a very walkable development, creates a lot of opportunity for access to other modes of transportation that are nearby than vehicular access. There is a discussion in your staff report about what that reduction would do and how many spaces it would allow. And overall, what it would do is if you had an apartment building that had 2-family or 2-bedroom uses or 2-bedroom apartments, it would only require you to provide the parking as if it was a 1-bedroom apartment. So that's really the difference between what they're asking, what they would be required to do and what they're asking for. Let's just pause the zoning discussion. We're going to talk about the historic structures just for a minute, and then I'll go over kind of the recommendation and the differences in what the applicant is asking versus what staff recommendation are. As I mentioned before, the Fairmount Cottage, which is this location here at 1717 North Fairmount, and the Holyoke Cottage, which is at 1704 North Holyoke, are registered on both the state and national historic registers. In general, this zoning action does not change their historic status. Nothing that this board can recommend, or even if city council approves the zoning, the underlying zoning for uses that could be permitted on the site, on their site and the surrounding sites, does not change them being historic structures. That all is governed by things at the local, state, and federal levels just because of the registers that they are on. Any type of modifications to the structures on the external side and possibly internal, we're looking into that, have to be done by separate reviews, which would be taken into or reviewed by our Historic Preservation Board. And there could possibly be reviews by the State Historical Preservation Office, depending on what they're looking at doing and what level of review it would trigger. So in terms of thinking, is this zoning going to make these structures less historic? The answer is no, not at this point. The Historic Preservation Board at their meeting on November 14th is going to be doing a review to determine if the zoning will have any detrimental effects that could potentially destroy the historic nature of them. There's actually no way to take a structure off of the historic register, the National Historic Register, unless if something happens to the structure that in a sense destroys it to where it's no longer contributing to the way in which it was registered on the historic register. These are both registered for their significance in architecture on the external. So any type of modifications they would have to do, all of that has to go through separate reviews. There's nothing about the actions of today's meeting or any future city council meeting that will affect their historic nature. All of that will be reviewed at a future date, and the Historic Preservation Board is reviewing the zoning in relation to the historic structures. So that's just an aside about those. It's just an added complexity to the case, but it is definitely worth noting. One last point before we get into the recommendation. As we initially alluded to in a previous point, the surrounding context, we talked about what it is south of 16th Street. North of 16th Street, as you can see, is significantly more multifamily zoned, in addition to limited commercial zoning with the university. The limited commercial zoning is parking lots, but it does provide them the opportunity to do significant redevelopment and with intensity of uses. And that's where the type of development the applicant is asking for north of 16th Street is more in line with what that block is, the character in which that block is in versus what is south of 16th Street. Okay, so we're going to walk through this document kind of page by page. What you have here is if there's writing in red, that is either a staff comment or it is part of the original staff recommendation. If it is in blue, it is something that the applicant is requesting that is likely different from what the original staff recommendation is. So there's nothing on page one. Everybody's in agreement with what parcel one can be. So we're going to, as well as parcel two in terms of the development standards for height, density, and setbacks. So keep in mind, staff is recommending denial of parcels 3 and 4. In your staff report, staff did provide recommended language should the board feel that 3 and 4 should be approved. And so what you're seeing here is modified language that the applicant is asking the board to consider, in effect trying to ask them to approve parcels 3 and 4 with this changed language as a way to help them develop parcels 3 and 4 versus a straight up denial. So in parcel 3 and 4, staff was recommending, if the board chose to recommend approval of it, staff was suggesting that the zoning, the maximum height be per MF 29, which allowed 45 feet. The applicant is willing to come down to what's allowed in TF3, which is 35 feet. So that's in line with what the surrounding context would have. It'd be a 35-foot structure instead of a 45-foot structure. They're also willing to increase the setback of structures away from abutting properties on the south down here, as well as this little notch here. Staff recommended a 15-foot setback. They're recommending 20 and even 35 feet on parcel 3 or 4. Staff's opinion of that is we don't necessarily see the need for the additional setback. The staff recommended 15 feet would be sufficient in our mind. Again, it's information for you guys to consider. So if we move on to the third page, land uses and development standards. This is where we talk about what type of uses are allowed on the parcels. Under parcel 1 on A, they define short-term rental, which is something we asked them to do. It wasn't originally defined in the PUD. Under item B, they, on parcel 2, staff was okay with them putting a commercial parking area in. What a commercial parking area would be is it's not parking related to a specific use. It could just be something where it could become like a pay lot for students or something like that. It could just be open parking for anybody on the street who wanted to park there, but they would be able to control it and choose whether or not they would charge for it or anything like that. They're saying they're willing to take it out. Staff original recommendation was okay with it being in there. Further on item B, personal care and personal improvement services, the staff recommendation was to remove those items from parcel 2. So again, parcel 2 is north of 16th Street. It is where the historic structures are. All the uses listed there, staff was okay with, except for personal care and personal improvement services. Our feeling was those start getting a little bit more intensive types of use, especially considering parcel 2 is on the south part of the block closest to this contiguous residential area to the south. So we felt that those types of uses would be a little bit more intense than what we were comfortable with. As you can see, the applicant wanted to add a use which was a coffee, tea, or gift shop type thing. It was not part of the original request. It was not part of something that staff originally looked at, but they wanted to make sure that if there was like an office or a bookstore, that they could also have a coffee shop in there. And overall, I don't think staff has any issue with that. So if we move down to parcel 3, item C, they're asking for B multifamily residential zoning, and they show several exceptions. Staff recommended MF 29, which is what it's currently zoned right now. Parcel 4, item D, they're looking to actually reduce the zoning, what use is allowed to what is allowed in TF3, which is what it is on right now. Staff recommendation was MF 29. They're looking to reduce the types of uses that are allowed to those permitted in TF3, in addition to an ancillary parking lot that would be additional parking related to a specific use that they own. It is still a private lot. And a group residence limited, which allows up to 15 individuals, so it's not necessarily, it would have to be a small fraternity or sorority. And then, of course, short-term rentals and multifamily development. Landscaping, this is something I didn't cover in the staff report because it was just going to be easier to talk about it here. The PUD was recommending that if there's a solid screening fence between, like on the perimeter of the, like say for example, this area right here, if there's a fence along here, that they were not required to have any type of a landscape buffer, a shade tree every so many feet. Staff, knowing that there are, even though it's zone B multifamily, wouldn't necessarily have to adhere to the landscape ordinance because it's related to the zoning district, but because there are lower density uses on this parcel, for example, of requiring that landscape buffer in addition to the screening fence. So that's something that they are not asking to do. Staff is recommending that landscaping be installed. Again, it would truly only have an effect on this property line here or these property lines down there. And according to the staff's or the applicant's information, they are okay with putting a landscape buffer on parcels 3 and 4 if they are approved, but they're not wanting to do the landscape buffer on parcels 1 and 2. And then everything else going through the document, there's red text where it was staff recommended language that the applicant is okay with. One of them regarding landscaping in terms of a landscape street yard, requiring as much of the landscape street yard to be in front of the property versus some of it being able to be planted elsewhere on the property. Item number 7, parking and transportation. There was a lot of discussion about the parking reduction for multifamily uses. There was no discussion about how much parking would be provided for commercial uses if they go in. And so staff was recommending that a parking study be submitted to planning prior to commercial uses being able to go in. Item 8, architectural controls. Parcels 1 and 2 would be governed within themselves for architecture. Parcel 3 would have its own if it's approved, and then parcel 4 would also have its own, and they were amenable to that language. And then signage, as I talked about before, they were amenable to staff recommended sign language. So to recap, just a recommendation, staff recommendation is to approve the PUD for parcels 1 and 2. So that would be those properties north of 16th Street. There's recommended text in there. Of course, the applicant is requesting some changes to that. We don't agree on them. And then the other part of our recommendation is denial of parcel 3 and 4 south of 16th Street. If the board chooses to recommend approval for parcels 3 and 4, there would need to be findings stated for the recommendation. And then overall, some of the work that has to be done is if we're going to be approving even parcels 1 and 2 or all 4 parcels, what governing language is the PUD going to state? Let me take a moment to go through the rest of the slides here if you want to move forward, Paul, to the next slide. That's the aerial. Next slide. It is in the land use codes would be for parcels 1 and 2, new residential employment mix. So you're looking at a mixture of kind of neighborhood serving commercial uses in addition to higher density residential, which is what their request is for. So we feel it conforms to the comprehensive plan. South of 16th Street is just new residential. It does allow for higher intensities, but based on the context of what is around is why we're recommending denial. Next picture. This is the PUD drawing. And the structures that are on here are the existing structures, not anything that is planned. Next picture. For these purposes, we didn't, since it's such a wide range of area, I did certain blocks and collages just because we're just going to be looking at what kind of the surrounding context. So this is looking at the existing PUD. This is the newest structure built there. And this is the other apartment building on Vassar just north of it. Next picture. This is looking on the other side of Vassar, on the opposite side of those apartment complexes. You have a fraternity or sorority house. This is a multifamily house. It could also be a fraternity or sorority, and then a single family home right across the street. Next picture. This is looking at parcel 2, so we're looking west from Fairmount. This picture right here, this is now a parking lot. You can see they have it formed. This is the Fairmount Cottage, which you can see better at this picture. And then you have a duplex building just north of it on that property. And this is the very corner building at 16th and Fairmount. It's a house within the PUD. Next picture. This is looking east. These are multifamily structures, as well as, you know, some of the contrast we're seeing in this neighborhood. You have multifamily brick structures next to a single family home. Next picture. This is looking on Holyoke. This is the Holyoke Cottage at the corner of 16th and Holyoke. These are several 3 or 4 plexes in the north portion of the PUD. This is across the street, again, looking at single family homes and apartments and single family homes across the street on Holyoke. Next picture. This is looking at parcel 3. So this is existing structure on parcel 3, and this is the north portion that you can see. It's a very large area, but only has the one structure. And then this is farther south on parcel 3. Next picture. This is looking west from Fairmount. This is a historic church on the corner of 16th and Fairmount, and these are just residential houses along the block. Next picture. And this is looking at properties south of parcel 4. This is a single family home on parcel 4. This is a home south of parcel 4. And this is looking across the street to the park. Next picture. And that is it. The District Advisory Board will consider this on Monday, so we don't have any word from them. And I think with that, I can stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions from the commissioners for Philip? All right, we will then hear from the agent or applicant. If you come forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes. And in our high-tech room, you can see the 10 minutes counting down on your screen or on the clock on the wall.
Okay, thank you. Brian Litteback, MKEC Engineering, 411 North Webb Road, on behalf of the owner and applicant. Thank you, Philip, for the extensive presentation. Go ahead and do the next slide, please. I'm going to try to go through these slides fairly quickly, but I hope to show that there's a reason to include the parcels to the south of 16th Street into this amendment. So go ahead, next slide. This is, again, just a representation of what Philip had just showed you. The orange dots are the historic properties that surround or are within the application area. I think there's a couple items of significance. This property is zoned B multifamily to the north. Of course, to the north of that is the WSU parking lot, and that is zoned LC, limited commercial. It was discussed about some landscape buffering here. That landscape buffer, per the landscape ordinance, is based off of the zoning classification as opposed to the use. This is a multi-tenant property effectively. It may be classified as a duplex online, but it's functioning as a multifamily unit. There's a diversity aspects on these parcels with the B multifamily. Next slide. We had a public hearing, but I'll just, we have a significant number of signs that went out on this, so I just thought I'd point it out. There's the 11 signs that went out. Here's the existing parking lot that was recently constructed. This is on parcel 4, which is against the park. This is parcel 3, which is opposite of the park on the block to the east, to the west rather. Next slide, please. We had a neighborhood meeting in addition to the hearings that we're having here. We had 46 postcards sent out to all the folks in this area. This is the exact same area as the ownership list. I know that maybe one of the pamphlets that you had received from someone said they weren't properly notified. I think I had heard from staff that they were properly notified. And I think it's important to note that we had a neighborhood meeting, and we did glean some information from that neighborhood meeting. We heard about some drainage concerns in this area. We also heard about some tree concerns in this area. We also heard about there's a desire to keep this neighborhood in context with the neighboring properties to the south, south of 16th. We also heard that that they'd like to keep the architecture similar, so we've put that into the PUD. We also heard that they don't want to have any fraternities or sororities, so we made that change or made that happen south of 16th. Next slide, please. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but I think there's been a lot of improvements done in this area, both transportation, other enhancements to increasing bicycle accessibility on the streets. So there's been a lot of improvements in this area, and so those improvements were geared towards some of these increased housing in the area and improved housing. I think you've seen this slide before probably on some of my previous presentations, but the average age of a lot of the houses in this area are 69 years old. Some of these properties are just ready to be renewed. I think it's important to note that I'm not talking about the historic properties necessarily, and we're not planning on raising those. We plan to enhance them and bring them up from the place where they are now, or at least our client has instructed me of that. These are mid-rise dwelling units are prevalent in this area now, and that's been planned, of course, south of 16th. We've offered up a reduced height, so we're going to talk a little bit about that more here in just a bit. But I think it's all in context with properties. I think it's also important to note that this is a local developer that's developing these properties. Next slide. This is just the comp plan. A better zoom in was provided, so I'm going to skip that slide. One thing to note is that we do have good connectivity to public transportation, and as you can note, there's Shocker students get to ride for free. Next slide. This is the bus route on the campus, so just illustrates that there's been a lot of planning and done to take care of that. Next slide. This is a parking plan that shows the different types of parking available for the university and their students. Next slide. And I can go back to these slides if you'd like. This doesn't represent very well, but this is a master plan for the bike study, and that those plans have been implemented with the bike lanes on the sharing bike lanes along 17th Street. Next slide. And just reiterating the fact of what I just said there. Next slide. This is a rendering of what is proposed on parcel 1. These are new, primarily student housing, but certainly folks that are not students could live there. Next slide. Just another view of the same. Next slide. And this is another view of the same. Next slide. This is a site plan. It doesn't represent very well on my screen, but I think up here it looks pretty good. This is just a overall site plan that shows kind of an amenity area in the middle. Next slide. This is on parcel 2. This is a planned, a concept of what's being planned for the property. Just to orient you, this is the historic building of Fairmont, and then this one is the Holyoke property. These are, as you can see, there's the Holyoke property, but the idea is to incorporate in with Storytime Village and plan to expand on that footprint and building in a character that is similar in nature to what's the historic buildings, hopefully complementing the architecture. Certainly those plans will have to go through architectural review at the national, or not necessarily national, but local historic preservation board. But these are just important to show that there's been some significant planning. Next slide. I've done a couple blow-ups here just to kind of show a little bit. This is the existing footprint, and this is the existing footprint of the other historic building. The idea would be maybe have some artist lofts here, or artist, authors. I don't know if you're familiar with the Storytime Village, but it's a really great program. Please check it out. Next slide. This is in context to 3 and 4. Just want to mention that this parcel 3 was rezoned not so long ago in 2018 to MF29. So there's precedent that we've brought multifamily into this area. Certainly TF3 can be have multifamily on it as well. It doesn't currently have multifamily, but the idea is to build renew these properties and to build property that would be a good transition from the higher densities to the north, and have a kind of a step down, if you will, approach on the zoning, which I think is what the idea of some of our zoning codes is to make them more compatible. And I think, in my opinion, stepping down would be good here, and especially with some of the provisions we've revised. There's existing parking in the rear here. I just thought I'd point that out. This building is currently 10 feet away from the property line, and we're offering up some ideas for reduced or increased setbacks, even beyond what staff had asked. But those are options. We would take the staff's recommendation if you guys were to approve that, or if you've deemed necessary to have increased building setbacks there. We've removed much of the commercial components to this. Again, this is a local developer. Next slide. These are next few slides are just some concepts that to give you some inspiration for the scale and the type of structures. The idea is to bring the buildings close to the street. I've done a lot of work with traditional neighborhood design with other projects, and this would lend well for a traditional kind of feel of neighborhood design, being it's adjacent to the park. That having the porches closer to the front of the street is desirable. We've limited the parking to be in the rear of the property, so this gives you some context. Next slide, of the vision for the property. So these are just some ideas. Certainly, the ideas could change, but this is the vision where you could have up to 3 stories, and the TF3 would allow for that story, that height. Next slide. I think that's it.
Did I run out of batteries already?
I've got a question. What was
Go
your
ahead.
notification?
Pardon me?
What was the notification ring?
It was a 350-foot list, and I think it's important to note that we're generally in agreement with staff comment on a lot of the items that they had provided. So I think, from a context standpoint, with the exception of, outright denial on the southern parts, if it were approved, I think we're in largely in agreement on certain aspects.
Other questions for the speaker from the commission? Thank you. We will now move to public comment on this item. So if you'd like to speak, please approach the podium, give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes each.
Chairperson Fox, members of the commission, my name is Greg Kite. I'm a local attorney and president of the Historic Preservation Alliance of Wichita-Sedgwick County, Inc. Our corporate headquarters are located at 230 North Market. Let me just say that I appreciate very much staff's information that was provided about the historic properties. I think they did a bang-up job, and I appreciate that. I am appearing here today, frankly, out of an abundance of caution with respect to both Holyoke Cottage and Fairmont Cottage. As you know from your packets, both of these residences are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. As such, they are afforded certain protections under both the Kansas Preservation Act regulations, as well as the Secretary of the Interior's standards for the treatment of historic properties. In addition to the information provided in your respective packets, I think it should be known that Fairmont Cottage is one of 3 sister residences designed by Proudfoot and Bird. The other 2 are the Aviary, located at 330 Circle Drive in College Hill, which was constructed by George Bird, hence the Aviary, and was completed in 1887, as well as Riverside Cottage, 901 Spalding in Riverside, which was built by Thomas Fitch. For the past several years, I have met with Mark Farha, and on a number of occasions at both Holyoke and Fairmont Cottages to discuss options and alternatives with respect to each. I thought we had very productive discussions. In fact, I was looking forward to a collaboration between Mark and the Historic Preservation Alliance, Inc. However, at this point, that has not occurred. The Historic Preservation Alliance believes that both Holyoke and Fairmont Cottages should be kept as original and authentic as possible. Uses such as administrative offices and meetings would seem to meet that criteria. I would entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions for our speaker from the commission? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your testimony. Next speaker, please.
I think it's loaded up.
Please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
All right, so my name is Lonnie Barnes. I live at 2924 North Terrace Drive here in Wichita, Kansas, 67220.
Go ahead.
Paul, do you want to put up his PowerPoint, please? And then we'll restart the timer.
Well, yeah, bag it up. So how do I get to mine?
Paul will bring it up from the control room, and you'll have to ask him to advance slides.
Okay. Where's he at? Will he hear me? Okay. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go really quick. This here just reiterates here, these 2 properties right here. This is 1729, this is 1725, where the parking lot has gone in. This is my property right here. These are surrounding properties here, and you can see these are pretty much owned by the developer, Faha and Company. So next. Oh, okay. So what we're saying here, the biggest issues we're having here is with the parking lot and size number of parking spaces it has and the setbacks and screening and buffering in here. Parcel 2 is where our property is contained in here, and currently here, the parking lot here sits right next to our property line. This PUD would allow them to disregard the 15-foot setback and the buffering that's required in a multifamily and duplex area. They've already jumped the gun. Next. And so our issues and problems with this here is that we didn't go through the proper steps and procedures here to get these verified and notified. We just went per our PUD, did the work. What that requires is that you do have some association or some building that you've associated this parking lot with, and within 600 feet, and definitely that calls for conditional use. The applicant received a demolition permit to tear down a garage here toward the southwest corner. But when I showed up over there, they'd already started demolition and removal of all the information, all the stuff, including the fence along my property line. What this does, and without the buffers in this area in close proximity to my property here, you create these problems of a nuisance and privacy, safety, light shining in there, people and animal being able to come to our property because they brought extra dirt and compaction in, elevated it high above mine. Next slide. And what that does, when you've elevated that property so much in here, now I've got a runoff in between my property and there coming down. Next. Those things I stated here about having the proper notification, I say here proper permits and drawing reviews in here. This was questioned here by the staff and also repeated here by the zoning people that they had not received those requests. Next. And then per the current zoning here, say that there is a requirement here for a buffer between the multifamily and duplexes and single families and stuff of this nature. And it says there's a 15 width setback, and that parking should not be allowed next to the adjacent thing in here, but you could put screening and buffering within that buffer zone. It also talks about it here in the parking lot and screening here, and it says all new parking lots or additions shall have a continuous screening and view from the adjacent residential properties. And that can be walls or fences in here. This part talks about tree placements and number of trees. Also talks about the landscaping and those things.
Lonnie, your time's up. If you have one more minute, can you wrap it up in a minute?
Yeah. So quickly go through the slides. I want you to see the property here. This is my property here. This is the property line right here. This was the excavation and stuff that started. Next. When you see here, this is the stuff that's been demolished in here. This is the fence that was taken out, damage done to my property here, pile storing up in here, and excavation going here. Next. Clearly on the landscape drawing here, this landscape wasn't approved until the 27th. All this construction started on about the 22nd. Next. As you go down here, you can see here's the parking lot, and here's my property coming along here. You see the 15-foot elevation and the slope coming down, brought in compaction materials, and here's the parking lot now. Next. Next. Okay, so when they brought in extra dirt to backfill behind that created a slope coming down here and the compaction coming down here. That's creating an issue with runoff and water between our two properties here. Next. So here's my beautiful wife, and she's showing you this elevation here. We put a level here to show there's a 15-foot leveling point to come across here. This pipe coming down is part of my drainage. That's the top of it right here is 6 inches. To get up to 15 inches to drain water away or hold it there, I'd have to bring dirt in this high. You see this going behind my shed. It goes all the way down there and all the way down this slope here. There's a portion there that they didn't put any backstop, and I'm not sure why. Next. So guys, this drawing here shows you our property, the field next to it, WSU's parking lot here next. This parking lot was put in 37 years ago. Come back one more time. Go back one more time. And what it shows you in here is that setback that they did 37 years ago. It shows you the fence and the height going all the way down. Next. Keep on to the next. Here.
We're approaching the limit of your
Okay, so my recommendations
minutes,
down here is that this pod here not be allowed in here with those unless we have these stipulations that all reviewing parties come back and review the status as it is now and make recommendations to the developer to make those corrections as it is. And if this pod, if he's not able to do those, then he needs to cut that back and pod be denied and cut the parking lot back to the current zoning.
Thanks for your testimony,
Oh,
Lonnie,
okay.
for your time to prepare. I know that was a lot of information to give us in a short time. Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. And next speaker on this topic, please.
Yes, my name's Ed Langston, and I live at 1621 North Vassar, which is the property that adjoins parcel 4, the proposed parcel. And I just want to go on record to express my concern about how the stormwater drainage is handled. If there's a parking lot or a covered surface, it's going to sort of amplify the runoff. And my property that borders the parcel 4 is actually the low, the low spot, so the water settles there and then drains east to Vassar Street. And I'm sure that the stormwater city planners are going to take that into consideration and direct that water towards Vassar rather than letting it come to my property line, because it'll probably overwhelm my yard. But I just wanted to go on the record with that, and I'm sure the stormwater guys are going to do it right. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents in, and I'm sure Mark and his guys are going to do it right the first time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this speaker? And you're right, sir, this is a decision on the appropriate use of the land, but the next step would be platting, and then stormwater officials and engineers would be looking at the plan to make sure it meets. Philip?
Just a note on that. It is already platted. However, stormwater is reviewed during the time of building permits.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. All right, thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Darrell Carrington. I'm husband and father. I live at 1512 North Gentry. In my former life, I served as the university's community liaison under President Dr. Bardot. And my charge was to collect a consensus from the Fairmount neighborhood, historic Fairmount neighborhood. And as I read what was sent out, I'm focused on the slippery slope aspect in terms of the concern with partial 3 and 4. As I convened the community, one of the concerns from the community was that slippery slope, that erosion of the community character. And that is my concern, and the concern of many of my neighbors. So I share that concern along with the staff. However, partials 1 and 2, I am personally supportive of, and as a advocate of Storytime Village and what they do in the community, not only the Fairmount community, but the state of Kansas. I think that is an awesome contribution in terms of that development. That is the Holyoke Cottage development. I'm supportive of that, and not only might, but I'm speaking as a member of the Fairmount Neighborhood Association, board member. So anyway, thank you for the comprehensive look at what is being proposed via the staff. Thank you for that. And again, really concerned about the erosion, the slippery slope, as I describe it, in terms of commercialization south of 16th Street. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you.
Any other speakers on this topic, on this case? Huh?
My name is Elena Engel. I live at 3608 Meadow Lane, and I am currently and several times a member of the Historic Preservation Board. I brought along a booklet that we have put out over the years that has pictures of the Fairmount Cottage and the Holyoke Cottage in their glory. And I'd like to leave that with the developer and say that this is something we want to have done. We want the historic properties to be historic properties. We don't want them torn down. We don't want them made to look like crap. So please look at this and see what you can do.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you for your testimony and sharing the book. Any other speakers on this case? Seeing none, any participants virtually who would like to speak on this case? Hearing none, and I can't see if there's any activation there, staff. Hope you'll speak up if you see it. Then we would call the agent back for, oh, is there a speaker?
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mic button.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name and address. Can you repeat your name and address? I think I spoke over you, please.
Yes. I wasn't sure if I was ready, if you were ready for me.
Yep, we're ready. Go ahead.
Willenberg, 1402 North Garland. I would just like to reiterate support of denial of parcel 3 and 4 as a 30-year plus realtor and a member of Historic Preservation Board and someone who networks frequently with other presidents of core neighborhoods. Letting the residential fabric of a neighborhood become 70 to 80% rental makes it extremely difficult to keep neighborhood pride, cohesion, and property values for the homeowners there. And people who are looking to purchase in a neighborhood have access to all of that information. They can take virtual tours online of the neighborhood. They can look up percentages of rentals versus owner occupied, and they make decisions that way. And so it definitely affects the residents in the rest of the neighborhood. And we do have a transition zone north of 16th, which I appreciate staff pointing that out. As a historic preservationist, I would like to say there are 2 more historic properties right in the middle of parcel 1 and 2 is an apartment complex built in 1929 that is Spanish revival and is on the National Register as part of a property resource of Wichita. Also, just directly south of parcel 2 on the corner of 16th and I can't even, Fairmount, is a church that is listed on the National Register. This particular neighborhood has such a historic fabric. It should be important to maintain that. To that, I think it would be important to really look at the 25% ratio of cars to apartment buildings would be important. This neighborhood does not have a lot of through streets. They have been configured to have blocks that you can't go through, you have to go around, making it a little more difficult for emergency vehicles if the need applies. And by having more cars pushed to street parking, it's only going to make that more difficult for emergency vehicles. I mean, it's great to slow traffic down, but there are times you don't want that. Also, I think the reference to keeping parcel 1 and 2 architecturally similar to the newer apartment buildings should be looked at because the immediate area is older. The new ones are further over on Yale and Harvard. The ones on coming in on parcel 1 and 2 would be better served to match more closely, say, the apartment building that's there at 1702
Ms.
North
Wellenberger,
Fairmount.
you've reached the
And
end of your 3 minutes. Can you,
Thanks.
can you, any other new issue you'd like to, any other new
I have a
issue you need to add?
I have a question
Go ahead.
of Claire.
Yes.
Those Spanish-style apartment complexes, are you recommending that the new builds more closely match them than the renderings that we saw?
I think the renderings that we saw do not fit the historic fabric of this neighborhood. And either that Spanish colonial, Victorian, arts and crafts, anything that blends in that period when that neighborhood was developed, which went from about 1888 to 1940. That would be architecturally more in keeping.
Any other
Okay.
questions for the speaker? Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other persons participating virtually who would like to speak? Okay, then I would call the agent back for a rebuttal, and you have 2 minutes.
So I just wanted to point out that one of those historic buildings, the Granada apartment, that's owned by our applicant, and they've put significant investment to restore it and bring it up online, similar to what we're trying to accomplish on the other properties nearby. I would just add that I think everybody heard me speak about this earlier. These 2 properties are zoned B multifamily. This property is not a single family house. It's not a duplex. It's zoned multifamily, and this landscape ordinance, as it reads, does not require landscape buffering between the 2 parcels. I'd also like to add that, what we're trying to accomplish here is to build in context with the neighborhood as far as some of the architectural styles on parcels 3 and 4. This parcel 3, as we know, is not a residence. It's a commercial building. I don't think that we want to try to maintain some of those characters that are going on here, and we've provided that information to you as you've seen some of the renderings of those properties on the south of 16th. Just to reiterate, we don't wish to tear down the historic buildings. I think it was brought to our attention by the Historic Preservation Board that they've been working collaboratively with the owners of this property, and they've been vacant. These properties have been vacant for a long time. My daughter even said, that one looks like it's not being lived in. So I think it's important to note that, the progress here is that we desire to make them lived in and have them functioning as assets in our community. And this zoning would help that occur.
Adjacent neighbor issues that were brought up, is there a plan to address the elevation, et cetera?
Certainly. The parking lot's under construction. They're actually pouring the approaches today. The inspection was done, and that was given approval to pour the approaches. Certainly, it's a work in progress. The fence will be restored. It'll be an opaque fence as opposed to a chain link fence. I find it a little bit amusing that in our neighborhood meeting, it was strongly talked about this tree that we saved. It's a huge evergreen tree. I should have put it in our presentation, but it was discussed that we tear that tree down because it's dropping needles on the property. Yet we want a landscape buffer. I'm not sure it's not adding up to me, other than the fact that we just want to slow down production on the project. So if you have a chance, you got to check out this tree. It's an amazing tree that we saved. So,
any questions for the agent? Yes, Commissioner Warren.
Well, as a part of you said that the parking lot was being approved. Did that deal with elevation?
yes, there's been the stormwater engineer has reviewed it and approved it. Likewise, the landscape plan was reviewed and approved. I mean, there's been reviews and approvals of this process. It's not complete in the fact that our zoning across the street is not rectified for the building that is desired to put on there. But there's certainly, that parking lot would be used for whatever building would reside in this area, whether it's built or not. So,
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I have one. Would it be a huge setback to you if you added more parking? It really does seem like 0.8 cars is not enough. I personally have 3 of my 4 grandkids living and working and going to school out there, and they all have cars.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't have time. They're working, going to school. They don't have time for buses.
Yeah.
And if I go see one of them, and I am very familiar with this area, cars line the streets already. I mean, at certain times, whenever there's an event, I'm just worried. I'm kind of worried about not enough parking. Any way to rectify that?
Yes, thank
Add
you.
to that?
I'll just share with you that the current owner, of the property has over 200 and some units in this area that he rents and leases out, and the current demand is 0.5 parking spots, and so we're exceeding that demand right now.
Okay.
And
Well, that's
the
good
reality,
information.
yeah. So I mean, certainly, we're trying to accommodate for the future and how things might change, but we've seen a demand that is low, and that's one of the reasons why we allowed for commercial parking aspects on the properties, because we hate to build a parking lot and then not utilize the entirety of it. So if there was a need, some. Furthermore, I'd state I've mentioned and talked with various parties about a parking plan that would be developed for this area. That's not something that Brian Lindeback can champion. That's something else that someone else needs to champion. But I know in other universities, there's been significant parking plans put together when it borders universities. And I think that plan is starting to materialize in some shape or form. So,
And I think you've answered the question at hand, so thank you.
okay, thank you.
Yes, question, Mr. Commissioner Williams Bay.
Did I understand you to say that the drainage plan had been approved by the city before?
That's correct.
Obviously, it had to be before you got started with construction.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you, and we'll bring it back to the commission.
I think this might be a staff question. The notification area, you showed a map that identified the notification area for this PUD. And I'm curious, how many of those, I think somebody said that everybody was notified successfully. How many of those people were owner occupied, and how many of those are actually rentals in that area?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know how quickly we could come up with the one way of easily looking at it is whether or not the mailing address on the ownership list is different from the physical address in the neighborhood. And I don't have that readily available right now, but so unfortunately I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Did this
Commissioner
go
Cunningham.
Did this go to the DAB? And I guess I have 2 questions. And what difference will it really make if this goes to the Preservation Board on the 14th? There's no legal standing anymore, is there? I mean, I don't understand why send it to the Preservation Board after this hearing? And I just wondered if it went to the DAB.
So to answer the DAB question first, that the DAB happens on Monday, the 7th. So DAB 1 will consider this at their meeting at that time. The Historic Preservation Board, because of the way these structures are registered, it triggers a review by the Historic Preservation Board. And what they're doing is, this is the public hearing, but this board does not have the final authority in approving the zoning. And so even though this hearing is happening now and the Historic Preservation Board hearing weighing in on the zoning is happening after, their recommendation or their finding regarding how this zoning may affect the historic properties, much like the Planning Commission's recommendation and the DAB recommendation, will go to the City Council because they're the final authority when it comes to approving the zoning or not.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? We have go ahead, Commissioner Warren.
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions, conditions, parcels 1 and 2.
Mr. Warren, could you repeat your motion a little bit closer to the mic? Can you move it closer to your mouth, please?
Move to approve with the conditions recommended by staff for parcels 1 and 2.
So that would also then recommend denial of parcel 3 and 4, just for
Want to
clarification?
do that on a separate motion? Or do you?
I'll defer to Scott on that.
Or Jeff, but the way that I understand it, you're making a motion that would only impact parcels 1 and 2, and then maybe perhaps a second motion that would address 3 and 4.
Okay, then I would make a motion to approve with staff conditions, parcels 1 and 2, and denial parcels 3 and 4.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Cunningham. Discussion. Hearing none. We call for a vote. All in favor of the proposal to accept approval of parcels 1 and 2 and denial of 3 and 4, all with conditions as recommended by staff, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, do we need a roll call? I heard 3 nays, I believe. Let's go by roll call.
Fox.
Aye.
Dool.
Aye.
McKay.
Nay.
Green.
Nay.
Bill Johnson.
Nay.
Blick.
Aye.
Nix. Foster is absent. Warren.
Aye.
Joe Johnson. Mr. Joe Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Miles.
Nay.
Hartman.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
Williams Bay. I have the vote as 8 in favor, 5 against.
And 1 abstention. Motion passes. Oh, 1 absent. Okay, so now we're at 13. Okay, gotcha. Motion passes 8-5. Thank you. Give a moment for those testifying on this case to clear the room, and we'll move on to 4.4.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
on 4.4, I was a developer of a single-family property in the balance, all except for this 10 acres, and I think I should step down,
Okay,
lose myself. Thank you.
okay. Thanks for that conflict notification. All right. This is PUD 2022-00019, and we'll have the staff report. Aaron.
Good afternoon, Erin Bach-Friend with the Planning Department. PUD 2022-0019 is a request to amend the Equestrian Estates Plan Unit Development PUD 19 to create a new parcel and permit warehouse self-storage with custom development standards on property currently zoned PUD 12 at the intersection of East Harry Street and South 127th Street East. The Equestrian Estates PUD is approximately 160 acres, originally approved with 4 parcels, permitting single-family dwellings, stables, and riding facilities. You'll see that the subject property is located in the northwest corner of the PUD, and we'll get to the PUD map in a moment, so I can show you where that is in relation to the other parcels. But in regard to the zoning and development abutting the site, properties to the east and south are zoned PUD 12, developed with reserves in this area, an equestrian facility, as well as single-family dwellings farther to the east. And then north of the site, there is LC zoning, limited commercial zoning. Those properties are partially developed with duplexes. And then to the west of the site, properties are zoned LC and are developed with single-family homes. Paul, if we could go to the PUD slide. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult to see here, but the subject site and new parcel that would be created with this request is outlined here in black. This is parcel 5. It would take a portion, a 10-acre portion of the existing parcel 2. So when the PUD was originally approved, parcel 2 permitted single-family residences and open areas and reserves for monuments, landscaping, lighting, equestrian uses, and similar amenities for the community. The parcel was never developed with residences, and so currently, with the exception of a horse fence and a small accessory structure, it is undeveloped. Parcel number 5, so if you look, this is the existing parcel 2. Parcel 5 is again this portion here, 10 acres. The remaining portion of parcel 2 would be approximately 12.2 acres. And the uses for the new parcel 2 would be limited to warehouse self-storage as permitted in the LC Limited Commercial District. An important piece to note is that they are restricted to warehouse self-service storage and outdoor storage. This would not allow any other limited commercial uses to be developed on parcel 5. There had been some confusion about that, so I wanted to make that clear. Warehouse self-storage facilities in the limited commercial district are subject to the supplementary use regulations unless they are amended by the PUD. At the time that the staff report was printed, the applicant had requested waivers for a number of those supplementary use regulations. Since then, I have had conversations with the applicant and their agent, and they have agreed with staff comments staff recommendation to only allow for the waiver of items 3, 7, 17, and 18, and we'll get to those later. And then also number 4, they are willing to comply with number 4 should the language be slightly amended, and I'll walk through what that is in just a moment. So number 3, the first item that the waiver is requested for requires a minimum setback of 35 foot from RTO rights-of-way and 20 foot from all other streets. Staff is recommending the waiver of that item. Number 4, which is the item that there has been a slight change. So it currently requires a 15-foot landscape street yard provided on sides contiguous to residential zoning and a 15-foot landscaped front yard within 100 foot or across, 100 foot of or across from the residential zoning. So the applicant has asked that 100 foot be changed to 50 foot so that that requirement would only apply to properties, residential zoning across the street within 50 foot of the site as opposed to that on 100 foot. The next supplementary use item is number 7, which requires off-street parking, 1 off-street parking space per 8,000 square foot of storage, plus 1 per employee. And then 17, which requires a resident manager to be on site. And then lastly, 18, which would limit the total building coverage area to 45% of the lot area. So to further address parking, again, supplementary use regulation number 7 does require that 1 parking space per 8,000 square foot of storage, plus 1 per employee. And the applicant has proposed a PUD language for parcel 5 requiring 4 parking stalls for the storage use. And staff agrees with this request and is recommending the waiver of that item and requiring, I should say, only 4 parking stalls due to the infrequency with which folks typically need to actually park at a storage unit site. Typically, they're going to be pulling up in front of their unit, loading and unloading things, and it's not as common that they're going to be needing to park and do direct business getting out of their car with storage unit offices and things like that. In regard to screening and landscaping, the applicant and agent are now agreeing to comply with supplemental use regulation number 5, or I'm sorry, not number 5, the supplementary use regulations for number 4, with the exception of that 50-foot area, and then number 14, which would require landscaping and a landscape plan approved by staff for areas not paved. Additionally, the proposed PUD language does state that landscaping on parcel number 5 would be installed per the Wichita Landscape Ordinance. In regard to kind of how this translates to this site and how those regulations are going to apply to the proposed use here, the 15-foot landscape yard would be required on the south and east property line, so where abutting or across from residential zoning. And architectural semi-solid screening would also be required in this area. There is an option, rather than providing screening, to face the structures in such a way that the actual physical building provides that screening. And when that has been done in the past, the front doors of the structures are faced away from the residential abutting properties, and the backs of the building are used for that screening. Additionally, the screening fence would be required to be 6 to 8 feet in height and would need to be constructed of wood, stone, masonry, or a similar material. If you could go to the applicant's site plan, please. So you'll see here, also in regard to landscaping, there is a large, and you'll see it in the photos as well, but a large kind of grouping of trees here along Harry Street. And based on the site plan, they've indicated that they intend to keep those trees there, as well as providing landscaping here again to the south and the east, and fencing around the perimeter of the site with a locked gate. The proposed PUD language also did state that this fencing would be constructed of a consistent pattern and color to ensure that the landscaping and screening are complementary to the site and surrounding properties. And then with that, I'll move to architectural compatibility. Supplementary use regulation number 5, which the applicant has indicated they are prepared to comply with, would require architectural designs for these storage structures to be submitted to staff for review for compatibility with surrounding development, and also to ensure that the provided screening is adequate. I do want to point out that in regard to the architectural compatibility, that would not necessarily be a requirement to match the equestrian estates properties on the far east side of the PUD, but rather to be in context and compatibility with the stable properties directly to the south. And again, when we get to the site photos, I can pull those up and it'll give you a better idea of what that looks like. Development standards for the proposed parcel number 5 do defer to those provided in the LC Limited Commercial District. And there's a table provided for review in the staff report. I'm just going to kind of quickly go through that. But in regard to what is requested for parcel 5, the maximum height of the units, if it were to be as written in LC, it would permit up to 80 foot in height. Staff is recommending that that be limited to 35 foot in height for those structures. For the lot coverage area, the limited commercial district does not cover that item and does not have a limit. However, the supplementary use regulations do, but that is one of the items in which both staff and the applicant are recommending be waived. For setbacks, there is a required 10-foot rear setback for the LC district, as well as a 15-foot setback for the street side area. Circling back to the 35-foot standard that I mentioned a moment ago, the rationale for that is if the remainder of parcel 2 were to be developed with residential uses, so that leftover approximately 12 acres surrounding the 10-acre portion were to be developed with residential uses as currently permitted, the site would have to comply with compatibility standards per the zoning code, and those would require the structures be limited to 35 foot in height. So that was where staff got that recommendation. The original PUD was approved in 2000, and in 2001, the entirety of the PUD was platted. And the entire PUD was annexed into the city, but only basically every area outside of the northwest quarter of the quarter section was platted. So in regard to questions about drainage and access controls, those would be determined at the time of platting. Excuse me. Maybe we could go to the land use map, please, Paul. In regard to conformance with adopted plans, you can see here that the site is designated by the 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map as appropriate for new residential development. I do want to point out that new residential areas in the plan are stated to be likely developed or redeveloped by 2035 with uses predominantly found in the residential category, though pockets of major industrial and commercial uses will be developed with this area based on market-driven factors. Further, in regard to conformance with the comprehensive plan, there is recommendation and guideline in the plan stating that low-density residential uses should be buffered from commercial and industrial uses by open space, water bodies, changes in topography, or major barriers. And the residences that are largely in this area and then also down south are separated by the riding stables and reserve uses on parcel 3, which creates a pretty substantial buffer between this area of the requested amendment and the abutting residential uses. And further, design guidelines in the plan do state that non-residential uses should provide appropriate screening and buffering from residential uses, and these uses should have site design features that limit traffic noise, lighting, and adverse impacts. And staff feels that the screening and buffering required by these supplementary use regulations would be there to provide sufficient screening to mitigate any potential negative impacts of the proposed use. And then I will go through these slides and photos here. Paul, next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Next slide, please. You can see this is the subject site facing east. This is the horse fence that I mentioned, and then the accessory structure there in the northern portion of the property. Next photo, please. So you can see, again, a portion of that horse fencing, and then the back area of the stable property, so the equestrian property there. Next photo, please. And then, again, just subject site from a different angle. This gives a better view of that large area of trees that run along Harry, as well as the existing trees that are on 127th. Next photo, please. And then again, this shows the existing trees along Harry that ultimately entirely screen the subject property from the arterial intersection. Next photo, please. So these are duplexes that are located in the LC district on the north side of the subject site. Next photo, please. So this is the stable and riding facilities that were mentioned previously, located on parcel 3. And this would kind of be what staff would be looking to in regard to architectural compatibility. So matching more of this structure and the surrounding accessory structures as opposed to the residences farther east in the Equestrian Estates property. Next photo, please. This is, again, an LC portion of the abutting property that is developed with single-family homes. And then I believe right about here is a dividing line, and then there is some single-family zoning on that slightly abuts the side of the subject site. Next photo, please. So here I am standing at the entrance to the Equestrian Estates subdivision. So you can see that the subject site is located in this area. This is a large reserve that separates the subject site from the Equestrian Estates properties, which from this perspective would be located, behind the viewer, farther to the east. Next photo, please. And then standing in almost the same area, just slightly shifted, these are the Equestrian Estates properties located to the east of the site. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay. The waiver of the on-site staff, can you give a little background about the reason you recommend that to be waived?
Yes, so my understanding is that in the past, we have not required the on-site staff person if adequate security has been provided in regard to fencing, a locked gate, as well as some type of plans for, security and kind of
Limited
maintenance of
access.
watching the site. Yeah, like limited
So
access. And
current technology can
Yeah.
take care of that as opposed to it used to have to be a person.
Right. I don't mean to say that it's outdated. It's just that with new technology, things are a little different.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner? And this is questions from the commission, Commissioner? No? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, agent or applicant, you have 10 minutes.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, you can come on up. I just wanted to mention, this was my confusion. If that's a point of contention, we can go back to 100 feet. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I just was confused with the
Okay,
wording.
I'll note that. Good afternoon. My name is Cody Branham. I'm an attorney with Adams Jones Law Firm, and our address is 1635 North Waterfront Parkway. I represent the proposed developers of this site. They are here in the room today, Skylar Henson and Jack Miller. We also have our surveyor, Chad Abbott, and architect, Matt Cartwright. And I don't know if I saw the civil engineer walk in or not, but certainly sort of had the team here today to answer any questions to the extent I'm not able to answer them. Generally speaking, Aaron described the history adequately. Wanted to note no issues with the staff recommendations at all. As Aaron mentioned, we've been working closely with them. One point that Matt just mentioned to me on the 50-foot versus 100-foot correlation. I think that was some sort of error, and Matt can maybe speak to that a little bit more. But if that's a point of contention, we can certainly go back to the 100-foot that's in the language in your staff report as it's currently stated. Wanted to make one comment about a couple of the golden factors in terms of suitability for the uses to which it's currently permitted, and the fact that this property has been vacant for some period of time. And I think it also goes into the fact that we're requesting a waiver of an on-site staff person. It's, to our knowledge, this property has changed hands a few times over the past several years with various proposals for development, most of which, as I understand it, have been residential. It's our understanding, although not being privy to all those potential transactions, that the only utility that is available to the property line is electric. And so that has been a cause for concern that is, at least to our understanding, detrimentally impacted residential development in terms of the cost to bring those utilities to this property sightline. The benefit of this proposed development is that electricity is all that we need, and especially with not having an on-site staff person, there's no need for bathroom, water, things like that. And to that end, as Aaron mentioned, is going to be a locked gate. The tenants of the units are going to have a unique code that they'll be able to punch in to enter into the gate. So we'll be able to keep track of who's coming, who's leaving. There'll also be numerous security cameras there and available at the site. And then there will also be lighting. Another, item of I would anticipate some concern is maybe light pollution into the neighborhoods. All of the lighting is going to be oriented down, so it's not going to be some glowing orb out there in the field. We met with a couple different groups of property owners, some that live to the west, others that are part of the Equestrian Estates HOA. I recognize some of the faces here in the crowd today, and so rather than speculating on what their comments may be, I'll let them speak for themselves, and certainly can respond to any questions or concerns that they raise during their time. At this time, I'm happy to stand for any questions that there may be. Again, if I'm not able to answer a particular question, we have the experts in the room that can hopefully provide adequate responses for you.
Thank you, Cody. Anyone from the commission have questions for the agent at this point? Okay,
Thank you.
then we will move to the public comment portion. Just a reminder, we ask you to state your name and address. You have 3 minutes, and we do ask, again, given the number of persons here, and we've received a lot of comments in advance, that you not repeat concerns that are expressed by someone who's already spoken. All right, go ahead. First person, please.
My name is Sarah Dwyer. My address is 13533 Buckskin Court, and I have previously submitted written comments for the commission to consider. My husband and I have been residents of Equestrian Estates since 2005. We love the unique area we live in with its high-end homes in a country-like feel and nearby horse stables that are an unusual feature for any subdivision, completely unique to the area and something not commonly seen outside of a horse farm in Kentucky. To allow a storage unit to be built on the corner of Harry and 127th is detrimental to the surrounding neighborhoods. I'm all for progress, but an unmanned storage unit is not progress. It's not a business that's creating jobs. There's no reason to rezone for a frivolous, self-serving request. It adds absolutely nothing. Instead, it takes away value from all the many homeowners. If the rezoning is allowed, Pandora's box has been opened, and even worse businesses can come in. There are already 10 storage units within the nearby area, with the closest located at Harry and Greenwich. We do not need 11. We are lucky that Wichita is a city with plenty of land available. This speculative developer can look at property already properly zoned. Don't make an exception for something that offers no value to anyone but the one person who wants to erect unsightly storage units. I'm sure none of you would like this in your neighborhood, and we respectfully ask that you don't allow it in ours either. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Clinton White. I live at 1613 South Triple Crown in Equestrian Estates. My home is directly across from the proposed location. I attended the Homeowners Association meeting some weeks ago. It was a standing room only gathering. Discussions were wide-ranging, polite, but universally opposed to this proposed development. I stand in opposition of this development. At the risk of repeating Sarah's comments, I'll leave it at that, but I do stand for any questions that the group may have.
Any questions? Do you happen to know the number of housing units that are owner occupied in that area?
Equestrian Estates has 104 lots with 100 residences.
Okay.
There's a housing development immediately to the south. I believe it's called Stampede at 127th. It's a new development. I do not know how many homes are in there, but it's being developed as we speak. Further on, there's a Sierra Hills, which I think is comparable in size. I would add that as you go west, there are no commercial operations for 1 mile until you reach a transmission shop and a bank to the west on Greenwich. There's nothing until you get to Andover Road and then have to go north another mile. To the northwest, there's a shopping area at Kellogg and Greenwich. It's very adequate. But surrounding this entire area, it is all residential, with the exception of the beloved Equestrian Estates Center. So we ask that you deny this request on behalf of the residents that have lived here, that have bought here, that have developed here, that have made their homes here in this community based on the character that exists as it is now.
Okay, thank you for your testimony and your
Thank
answer. Next speaker. Yeah, you have a question? We have a
Yes.
question here.
I've got a question. You said that you're adjacent to this property.
I live directly east on Triple Crown, yes.
So you're approximately 1,000 feet from the east property line of this?
From the east property line of this, I think it would be less than 1,000 feet. I believe this stretches 300 feet to the east. And I would probably, I'd have to look at the map, but I believe I'm probably an equal distance from here to here, whatever that distance is. You will find Triple Crown, which is where housing development.
Do we have that, do we have an aerial that shows that or a map that shows
We
that?
have an
Paul?
aerial. The entrance to the area, the Equestrian State basically runs right along this border line here.
Okay.
We're still not, we need to get out.
Paul, if you want to pull up the PUD map, you can see from there a better idea of the distance.
Okay. This is Triple Crown Street. This is where I live. There's a pond there, there's a residence there. This is the vacant lot that you saw in the previous picture. So we're 1, 2, 3 houses. These are all homes along the area that would be within the sight line of the proposed development.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Dr. Rebecca Kirby. I live at 12022 East Harry. And I think you need to know from this, you can't hear me? Oh, that's amazing. From this map that this is a residential area. And many of these homes, you see it looks very spread out. You have your developments like Equestrian Estates, we have Terra Falls, we have Woodland Lake Estates. But this used to be county, so many of these homes have acreage. So we're very spread out, we're very pastoral, but we are still a neighborhood. And in the meeting that we had that was very informal about a week ago when many of us were finding out for the first time that there was a commercial development to plop down in our neighborhood. Everyone that was there was very alarmed, and I am reiterating that our concerns about having a commercial development just in our neighborhood. So we would prefer that not to happen.
Any questions for the speaker? Commissioner Williams Bay.
My front gate is a half mile from this intersection. That's why we're so spread out. This is Spring Creek right here, and this is East Lynn. So at this intersection, you get on Lynn, and there's 10 properties with anywhere from 2.5 acres, and we're out here.
We need you to speak in the microphone, please, and use the pointer to relate to the map so people virtual can hear you.
Oh, sorry, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
My front gate faces Harry.
Okay, thank you.
And we're a half mile to this intersection.
Okay.
And we have another gate that goes out to this street called Lynn, right here. And when I was saying how pastoral this is, there's 10 houses along Lynn that face Spring Creek, which is this little blue line right there, that are on 2 to 3 acres. We're at the very dead end next to the county land there.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Williams Bay? Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Right, next speaker.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Damon Ward. I live at 13224 East Equestrian Court. I just want to make a couple of comments regarding the recommendations that are listed in the packet. As you've heard from others, and I'm sure you have a lot more that you will hear from, when it speaks about the character of the neighborhood, a storage facility has nothing to do with the character of our existing neighborhood. The pictures don't do it justice. If you have been through the neighborhood, we all saved, sacrificed, planned, and built in that neighborhood for a very distinct reason, and it's the look and feel as it exists today. We do not want commercial. There is no commercial close by, and there is not an overwhelming demand for a storage facility inside of a residential neighborhood. I would argue that each one of you as commissioners would not want a storage facility that you look at that could be up to 35 feet tall in your backyard. It is something that we don't want, and it's something that we don't need. I would point to the comment that the amendments or additions recommended by staff should mitigate any negative effects. That is absolutely not true. A 35-foot tall storage facility of 12 buildings is an eyesore. It's going to be an elephant that basically is the face of the neighborhood, which we don't want. That will bring down values. That empty lot is not depressing our values. That is why we're there. That's why we built there. I would say that no mention of crime was referenced. Google, do storage units increase crime? Every single hit will say yes. There's a recent Cake News article about storage units in Wichita increasing crime. It is a fact. No comments were made about what would be done to address crime coming into our neighborhood. We don't want it. I would say that there wasn't a lot of mention about Paddock. Paddock is the subdivision that's right down here. I think there's about 80 lots in that subdivision. There's about 8 homes that are currently built. So there are 72 sites that average about $50,000 per home site. Homes are all over $1.5 million in that neighborhood that have been built. Who wants to build in that neighborhood if they're staring into a storage facility? That is going to repress values in the overall neighborhood. Thank you. I do want to mention in regards to landscape, there was no reference to irrigation. We need irrigation. Planting it once and letting it die does not work for us. I mentioned crime, and physical screening, using buildings as physical screening is a non-starter. We are very much opposed to this. It is something that we care desperately about, the value of our neighborhood, and we want it to stay how it is. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, hearing none. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Hicks. I live at 13517 East Buckskin with my wife and son. We've been residents there since 2007. For the record, my location is 4 houses east of the intersection of Triple Crown and Buckskin. I'm straight east of the pool house, if there's any questions. I have lived there since my son was 2. I have significant concerns in addition to those made by others. We do not understand how this can be architecturally compatible with our neighborhood. This was never represented as something that we would see when we bought our properties. We understand that there is ground contamination in that area, possible lead from a previous owner. We are very concerned about how that will be mitigated and managed. I'll leave that as hearsay at the moment. That is something that will have to come out in any evaluation. Additionally, we're going from a pasture that has the ability to shed water slowly to flat roof, flat parking lot. And where is that water going to go? The tree grove at the corner of 127th and Harry on the northeast corner fills anytime we get over 2 inches of rain, when the ground now wouldn't be a 2-inch rain. It'd take more than that. But in a normal year, that whole area is flooded. Where is the water going to come from? I understand that the city will work a drainage plan for that. But that has to be considered, and we can't have standing water because of bugs and everything else. We already have challenges with the stable. We don't need more. The other concern I have is RV storage. What is going to be stored in these buildings? We have not been told, although they're generally sized. Our covenants do not allow us to store RVs, and even in our garage. Is that something that's going to be allowed here? We have not got clarification on that. The other concern we have is 127th is narrow. This is going to add traffic in that area. Does the city want to take on the responsibility of managing additional traffic flow? We already have traffic challenges with Southeast, good neighborhood, but nonetheless, there are challenges there. I drive by this piece of property every single day on my way to Spirit. I've driven different routes. This is not, I may not be able to see it always from my personal property, but it is part of my neighborhood, and I feel quite strongly that this has no purpose there, no value for us. So at that point, I'm adamantly opposed, as are a number of my neighbors. We would prefer this not to go through, and there's just not enough information to justify what is being done here. So with that, I will defer to others. Thank you for your time and your interest.
Thank you for testimony. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Next.
My name is Sabrina Davis. I live at 13534 East Buckskin. My husband and I moved into Equestrian Estates in November of 2002. We moved into this neighborhood because we liked they were bigger lot sizes and the neighborhood feel. We also liked the idea of having a pasture right in our general area. My daughter has done riding lessons at the Equestrian Estates. We moved in because that was there. So while you say it's an empty open lot, it is not. It is actually a pasture area where horses pasture now. So I also just wanted to bring up the fact that while you say it's empty, it's not. It's part of the neighborhood. And I think everything else has been addressed, but that was one of the things that brought us to our neighborhood. We were one of the very first in that neighborhood, and we would hate to move, and we like the neighborhood as it is, and so we just want to make sure that we're also requesting that you deny this.
So can I ask, are you saying then that those who have horses in the area are pasturing them there currently?
I do not know. We didn't actually buy a horse there. We were just able to get lessons. So there are still horses there in that area. They are pasturing that area. Had we been able to afford a horse, we would have gotten one. So we just had her do riding lessons through that area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? All right, next speaker. Again, please add new concerns that haven't been mentioned already. Thank you.
My name is Mike Cunningham. I live at 12602 East OC Street in Wichita, 67207. Dear committee members, I'm here today to express my strong opposition to the proposed storage facility under discussion here today. My wife Mary and I have lived directly west of this parcel for almost 17 years. During this period, we have seen many changes to our family and this area as a whole. Having lived on South Seneca for several decades, we sought a new location to escape the hustle bustle of living on a major thoroughfare in Wichita. Our home search brought us to this part of town and we saw this property. We called our realtor and arranged for a visit to look at the spread of 5+ acres. We thought we had found a little piece of heaven. Our 5 college-age children were so excited, running about the place, talking about fishing in the pond, watching the horses running in the pastures, not having to worry about the traffic outside our front door. We put in an offer later that night. We had found our home, our piece of heaven. Over the years, we have invested heavily to improve our property, as have all our neighbors, many of whom who have lived here since the 60s and 70s. They survived the first Andover tornado that devastated many of the homes, including the farmhouse that once sat on our property. The residents in our immediate area decided to stay and rebuild their piece of heaven. When thinking about what I wanted to say to you, I thought of how this proposed structure would negatively change this neighborhood and the adjoining areas. I could talk about the increased traffic and the potential hazards to the dozens of school buses that travel down 127th Street each day. I want to mention the environmental concern, the increased flooding risks, the nearby corner compounded by all the runoff from such a large paved area, not to mention the lead contamination from the shooting range that existed here for decades. Also of concern is the crime, vandalism, and storage of illegal items in a residential neighborhood. My wife and I own a storage facility in another state and have seen firsthand of the breaching of the locks, the theft of personal property, the vandalism, and the destruction of facilities of an unmanned site. Being viewed on video recording does not deter someone who comes into an area to steal somebody else's property. We do not need or want this kind of activities in our piece of heaven. The developers with whom our neighbors and I met with attempted to put a positive spin on the project, but as the layers were peeled back, their plans do not meet a need in the neighborhood. In fact, their plans don't fit in with the plans of those who have lived here for decades. Their plans are only for the benefit of themselves.
That does conclude your time.
Okay.
We thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the speaker? Will you clarify, as an owner of a storage facility, you talk about the crime and damage. Is that to the actual storage units themselves, or is it to neighboring properties?
It's to both. They tend to break into our storage units. They break the locks. It doesn't matter how good a lock you put on one.
And the properties adjacent, are they immediately proximal or a half mile or so away?
Oh, it's all in a commercial area.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your testimony. Okay. Any other questions for the speaker? Next. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Sharping. I'm 12727 East OC, and I am opposed to this development. To kind of give you a reference, I live right across the street from Mike. So Mike is right here. He's probably visually the most affected by the development because he looks directly out. My house is right here. So many of the photos that were showed earlier from the point of view of the street, that's my house looking directly at it and Mike's house looking directly at it. Mike, almost on an every other day basis, takes his young grandchildren directly across the street to pet the horses. So this is an active horse pasture. This is not a deserted lot. This is, again, like earlier commented, this is why we moved into this area. It is ridiculous to say that this 35-foot building that's right here, which is the horse barn, is somehow related to common, property of the area. That is absolutely not true. It is a horse barn. It is part of the pasture, it's part of the field. When you add 35-foot rental areas, that completely ruins it and is absurd to think that you would allow that connection. The last thing that I would say that's hasn't been mentioned or minor been mentioned is right here is where the Ark Valley Shooting Club, this area here was active. I'm hearing in the 70s, 80s timeframe. I draw water, my drinking water from this here, I draw from a well. So I am not connected to city water. Jim Price right next here, he also pulls directly out of a well. I am extremely concerned about any kind of disturbance of this land and lead pollution. Unfortunately, when it's been mentioned to KDHE in Wichita, the comment that Mike gets back is, "Oh, we didn't know that was there." So that's a concern for me for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Commissioner Warren has a question.
Regarding your concern about disturbing the land, are you opposed to any development there at all?
I am not. I personally feel that it is zoned properly. The city did a good job zoning it as a single home residential area. That would fit. So yes, I would be very disappointed that my beautiful pasture land would be gone, but I fully understand development. I do not want rental.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers?
Afternoon, my name is John Pike. I live at 13050 East Harry. This right in through here is my property. 4 Mile Creek is our boundary. As you can see right there, that corner puts that piece right across from the planned acreage. My house is right about here. And yeah, this is full of horses. Every day, my dogs let me know frequently that there are horses there. Just restate most of what's been said. We came in there too saying, my goodness, look at this open space. We've got 7 acres. I have turned down an opportunity to split ours and add homes in there. I've been approached for that and said no. That's why we bought it. When we bought it, I looked at zoning and flood maps and all of those things, and this never came up. We've been there 10 years. I won't be as impacted as Mr. Cunningham and will be right across the street. The particular points, I don't really know why 35 feet is necessary. Basically, I agree, it shouldn't be here. I rent a storage unit for a boat. It's out on East Kellogg, surrounded by commercial property. It's well maintained, and I'm happy to have it. I would not want it in equestrian's pasture where I looked at it every day. And if that sounds like NIMBY, well, it does, but that's kind of why we have zoning. There's nothing, it's confusing in the staff reports whether they're going to allow outside storage or not. If this were to go through, I would hope they would not allow outside storage. That would really open the door to who knows what. It's mentioned no miscellaneous uses. Anecdotally, we hear that a number of storage units in town are being rented as man caves and party houses. I don't know if this is true. I don't personally know it. I've had multiple people tell me it is. I would hope that that would at least be addressed in here. That's not, that if for some reason you decide to let this in, wouldn't do that. One other question is on architectural compatibility. I'm trying to figure out, I don't know who makes the decision, but how you're going to make a group of storage barns compatible with the homes that sit directly across 127th. It can't be done. They're beautiful homes. They're not just lined up. We've already had the addition of the duplex addition here. We didn't like it. It's worked out okay. They're all homes. Again, I don't know how much is rental, how much is not, but they're at least homes. They aren't just a commercial facility. And, I hope this would not then start to lead off to the east. So fundamentally, I oppose it for those reasons and the others that have been stated. Thanks for your time.
If you saw higher density homes, like more duplexes or higher density homes, would that be preferable to you to?
It would. I'd like one of the other speakers. I wouldn't be real thrilled. I enjoyed the open space. But homes would be different than a commercial rental facility that might have 3,000-foot warehouses in it, if I read the application correctly.
You answered my question, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for the speaker? Okay, next speaker. Again, new issues that haven't been raised, if you would, please.
Appreciate the time. Rick Willis, 1802 South Triple Crown. My house is there on the picture. My concern is there's no real compelling reason to take a perfectly good residential area and make it a commercial district. Google Maps will show within a 5-mile radius there are 15 other storage facilities. I did a little calling around last week to see what the occupancy level is. Most of them don't want to discuss it, but those that do, they're way below 50%. There is not a compelling reason to add more storage in our neighborhood. The other issue is there's already a lot, as people have already said, there's a lot of commercial properties available in that general area. So why do you want to convert a beautiful neighborhood to commercial? The last thing is with a lot of storage facilities, especially ones with no on-site management, you don't know what goes on in those facilities. It was mentioned man caves. The other thing is commercial entities going in there, people running businesses out of them. Yeah, the tenant agreements say that that doesn't happen, but with no management on site, there is no way to control that. I've used storage facilities where my neighbors were running businesses. They were running warehousing operations, whatever. A lot of excessive traffic, a lot of crime, a lot of other ancillary problems. These aren't being addressed, and even if they are in the management agreements with the facilities, there is no way to control that when they don't have on-site. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Are you aware of any of the that others came in and thought about creating residential but didn't because of the lack of access to utilities? That was
I'm
mentioned
not.
early.
I
As a longtime resident, any awareness of that?
No.
Okay.
I have no history on it.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other speakers present?
Wayne Brown, 13200 East Harry. The question you just asked about utilities, that is incorrect. Running east and west on Harry, on the south side of the road, there's an 8-inch gas line and there's a city water line.
Yeah.
And if electricity is already available, then
Okay.
I don't understand that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for this speaker or, okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Arnold Binkson. I live at 1501 South 127th East, which is the northwest corner of Harry and 127th, which if I can work a mouse. I own these two properties right here, so we've lived there for 25 years. We bought it because it was out in the county and it was open. We had not a lot of neighbors because we bought in the East Lynn addition. The neighbor across the street, he had the 23 acres. It was great. He was a nice guy. Unfortunately, he passed away. The development made up, it was supposed to be duplexes and single-family homes. Currently, it's 90% duplexes, so we were disappointed with that. We take our dogs walking over here, we take our grandson over here, we enjoy the pasture, we enjoy seeing the horses, nothing that we haven't been told before. To see storage units there, I just don't believe in it, because we had opportunities to turn this parcel into storage units, and I wouldn't want to do that to my neighbors, have them look at something unsightly. I work construction, a 35-foot tall building. That's a tall building. You're not going to hide it with these trees. It's going to be unsightly for my neighbors across the street. There's no way to hide it when you're going to make it look like a barn. My neighbors kind of complain to me because previous owner I've got a shed, and it's 14-foot sidewalls, the new neighbors to the north of me, they're bearing with me because I was there a long time before. But to build new buildings that look like that, I'm opposed to this idea, and I just wanted to express my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Right, is there anyone else with new additional information to add?
Gary Roshkob, I live at 1807 South 125th. My big concern is the lighting. Any storage building has 24-hour lighting. I walk out and I go to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. I look up and I can see stars. That'll disappear when we have a big glow of a storage building, even though they're going to be pointed down, they said. But it's still going to be there, 24-hour-a-day lighting. That's it.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any additional concerns? We have some persons online who would like to speak on this item.
How do we indicate we'd like to speak?
Yes, go ahead, please, with your name, address.
Yes, my name is Tama Fraley. I live at 13410 East Mustang Circle in Equestrian Estates. I am opposed to the development. I know you've heard many things. The last comment, though, about the lighting is something, too, I think that we really want to consider. Not just the lighting as far as diminishing our view, which is wonderful out here, but the impact, the detrimental impact that 24-hour lighting is going to have on the beneficial insects in this area. It's a very natural landscape here. Among other things, we have foxes, turkeys, geese, lots of waterfowl, turtles. The disruption, were they to develop the area residentially, similar to the other neighborhoods, there would be probably some retention pond. There would be yards where these wildlife can continue to thrive. Paving it over and just putting storage buildings would be harmful to the wildlife here, as well as the many other issues that we've heard about. And then also for the people that are closest, sleep cycles in those homes will be disturbed. Even if the light is not strong or pointed down 24 hours a day, they're going to have those lights and they're going to have the headlights of vehicles shining in their homes because we really are close enough for that to be an impact. We've heard a lot about the security. That is a concern as well. The non-maintaining anyone there to monitor this. Just the buildings in a purely residential area opens us up for more crime, vagrancy, pollution, littering. These things add up, and it just does set a bad precedent for future development here. So other than, I don't want to reiterate things that other people have already said, I just wanted to add those points as well as my opposition. And any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you very much. Any other persons participating virtually who have issues to add? Hearing none. Was there anyone else in the room? Okay, go ahead.
You can hear me.
We can hear you now.
Davis. I live at 13534 East Buckskin. My wife is there. One issue that I've not heard is, have we had a study on the impact of what it does to if our values are diminished from this, which I've talked to 4 realtors and they said, yes, it will impact it. If our values are diminished, our taxes are diminished. So is the revenue received from having that commercial thing for the taxes going to offset the lost revenue for the city for our lowered taxes? I'm not an expert in it, but to me, it seems like that's a diminishing return for the city as well as for the residents. That's really all I have to say. It was just a thought.
Okay, thank you for your question and your input. Anyone else who would like to add issues that haven't been spoken? Anyone virtually? Okay.
My name is Dick Hayden, and I've lived in this third lot over here for 38 years with my wife. Our kids are grown. But something that hadn't been said is, and that we've talked about, that it might be nice for a little park there.
Thank you. Okay, I will now bring this back to the agent for rebuttal. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'll try to hit on some of the common themes of objection here as briefly as I can. In terms of the concern for lead contamination, we had an environmental assessment conducted by ISI Environmental that took numerous soil samples from various sites on the property, and their test results, just as a little background, trace amounts of lead are measured in milligrams per kilogram. The KDHE level of concern is 400, and the range of trace level results from the soil samples raised from 26 to 53 milligrams per kilogram, merely a fraction of the level that KDHE considers it at to be of any concern for any mitigation purposes. In terms of flooding, as you've seen on the site plan, the tree area is going to be left alone. And it's not included in your packet, but there is an alternative site plan that, should city staff dictate an on-site detention pond to help address some of those water runoff concerns, we are prepared to do that, and certainly, willing to do that. The concern of sort of a slippery slope, again, the only use of a commercial sense that we're requesting is the stated self-storage warehouse. And as you can see from the map, on the screen at the moment, there are already limited commercial uses permitted. Even though that's not their current use, there's nothing to say in 5 years things may not change. And so I think the slippery slope argument is a bit unfounded. In terms of traffic, as Aaron stated, in terms of a commercial use, self-serve storage is arguably one of the lower traffic uses in terms of a commercial sense that we could have. In terms of why this area and things like that, if you drive by the stables on a day-to-day basis, there are numerous horse trailers parked outside there virtually every day. And part of the desire here is it's becoming more and more common. I represent a lot of homeowners associations in the area. It's becoming more and more common that homeowner associations prohibit the parking of boats, trailers, larger items like that, not only in the homeowner's garage, but also on a driveway. And so that's part of the thought here is, let's provide an opportunity in these areas that restrict that, the ability to do that, to park it in a way that's, hidden in a manner that, these homeowner associations don't want to see. As a follow-up item, I think it speaks volumes that Kim, the owner of the stables, is not here voicing an objection today. She's as greatly impacted on this development as everyone else. Our developer has had numerous, as I understand it, conversations with her and alleviated a lot of the concerns that she has raised during the course of those conversations. And what was that? Do you have anything else? Oh, with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions. I know that was a bit long-winded.
Commissioner Warren?
Mr. Pike brought up 3 areas of concern: man cave, outdoor storage, and architecture. You want to speak on those just real briefly? It's a long day, so.
Sure, yeah. Now, the man cave issue, one, this is only going to have electrical, right? So that's, in part designed to limit someone trying to live there or make it a hangout space. There's not going to be bathrooms or water supply provided there. And certainly the rental agreements will not allow for, residency dwelling in there. And again, we can police that through the various security cameras. There's going to be 24/7 monitoring of those security cameras to ensure that the tenants of the units are not residing there. That's certainly not the intent. In terms of architecture, I think as part, to me, that's the next step in the process in terms of reviewing the site plan. That's one of the requirements that we're certainly okay with, is architectural conformity to the surrounding area. And, we'll work with city staff to accomplish that. And then lastly, in terms of outdoor storage, the language in the PUD request amendment does include the phrase outdoor storage. As of now, there are no intentions of permitting any outdoor storage on this facility. Everything's going to be enclosed in the units themselves, and there won't be, any permissible outdoor storage. Certainly, it's within the discretion of the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council if it dictates that outdoor storage isn't, appropriate here.
Commissioner Duell?
Is it the owner's intent to build these storage units to a height of 35 feet?
It's probably a better question for Matt Cartwright, the architect, to answer. I'll step aside for a moment for that.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt Cartwright, MJC Architecture, 450 North, 159th Street East, Wichita, but we're on the Butler side of the county line. That came up a number of times, and I appreciate that. That's something that's stipulated generally in commercial construction, but I can tell you that we've already requested a reduction based on the number of concerns voiced about that height down to 20 feet from a low eave height with a low pitch roof, as was mentioned. So frankly, that'll be lower than most high residential roofs.
Thank you.
May I touch on a couple other aesthetic convention or
Did you have a question? Would you
I
like?
was going to ask about the lighting, if you know what type of lighting you're going to have.
Yeah, that was something that I think was mentioned in one of the HOA meetings that I was not present at. But yeah, we've assured these residents that this would be accomplished with downlighting. Again, with a lower eave height, that's going to be, we don't have high gables that we can push that light way up high. So it's going to be established from a low elevation and downward.
An additional
Another
question?
Do you know what type of fencing or enclosure this will have?
All conversations to date has been a combination of cast in place or masonries at the corners for structural stability. It would transition to a decorative iron across the frontage at 127th Street, with some concerns about the visibility into the area of development. The owner has also been investigating combination of alternating with the decorative and the more solid cedar fence that's been proposed around the south and east side.
Okay, any other questions for the architect, Commissioner?
I think we interrupted. You started to talk about architectural integrity and blending into the neighborhood. Did we interrupt you when you started to talk about that?
That was actually my peer. I can't disagree that any of the comments that you can't make a metal structure blend with the beautiful equestrian estates with all of the dynamic of roofs and so on and so forth. My approach, and I think that of the owner, is to frankly be discreet, lower these down. We have the benefit of wonderful screening from the north, a floodway there. All of our grading goes to the north and northwest. So and of course, there's going to be erosion control. To your point, keep it discreet. We plan for a light colored neutral on the walls and a bronze, kind of the weathered wood look, similar to many of the comp shingles or shake shingles you might see in the area, but not to do anything, architecturally unnecessary to call attention to them. You might note on the stable, there's some really nice ventilation cupolas. There was some discussion, do we try to do something like that might be faux? The answer was no. I think we just want to keep these down low, discreet, and that was the best approach. Of course, the outside perimeter landscaping, the buffer we provided, we've even doubled the frequency of the large shade trees on that east side. And again, if you look at those images from a visual down that hill, even though some of these homes have a very high upper first floor level, they're going to be able to see down onto those roofs. But to a large degree over at Equestrian Estates, hopefully we're going to bring it down. And again, with the benefit of the grading is going to help us as well.
Somebody asked about watering, because I think they'd like for it to be green. My personal preference would be there be no water.
Right.
And that if this went through, you plant natural, big blue stem, little blue stem, whatever, so we don't have to use the water that we don't have,
Right. I think it would be premature at this point for me to address the final. I can tell you, obviously, that Mr. Straw with the MABCD will be reviewing our landscape plan. We do have a list of xeriscape type plantings and recommendations if that's the direction that the owner wishes to proceed with a non-irrigated system. What I can tell you is fortunately we do have a nice creek bed coming into the southwest corner of this property that's going to be running across the frontage. So even right now with the drought that we've been incurring, we've got some nice, green grass in that particular area.
Okay, additional questions? Philip?
And I would just mention regarding the landscaping, irrigated or non-irrigated, if it's required, if the landscaping were to die because it's required, landscaping has to be replaced. It's not a one and done, you give it a good first shot. If required landscaping is planted and it were to die or not flourish, then additional landscaping needs to be replaced to continue that landscaping.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think.
And if I may briefly, because some of the questions related to the lighting, just a brief comment. We have to strike a balance, right, with the lighting to us not interfere with the surrounding neighborhoods, but provide a sufficient amount of lighting to reduce crime, right? Crime typically happens in places that are not well lit up, and the criminals feel like they can get away with something. So that's a balance that we're mindful of.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any additional questions for the agent at this point? Questions can only come from the commission, I'm sorry. Ready? All right, bring this back to the commission then for discussion or comments.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Kimberly Miller from Eagle View Equestrian Center, and I've been on the phone the entire time. I just have to feed horses, so it's hard for me to leave. I just wanted to kind of, if you don't mind, can I speak for just a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, we had closed the comments, and I'm sorry that we didn't have you.
Well, I was on the dial-in number using my phone, but it wouldn't let me in, so I just connected via GoToMeeting because what was said about 5 minutes ago that I was okay with this, I wanted to comment on that if I could.
Legal.
Yes, you can vote to reopen it up, or there could be a question from a commissioner.
I would like to ask what you're the owner of the stables, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we heard that you had been in contact and that you were not opposed. Will you please share your opinion about the development?
Yeah, and I did meet with the developers regarding the plan, and they brought me their entire package. What I will say is that I listened to what they had planned to do. That doesn't necessarily mean that I agreed with it. So the comment that they've alleviated all of my concerns and that I'm okay with it is not accurate. I'm just not rude. I listened to it, and then I knew that there was going to be public comment, so I just saved that for that. But I agree with everything that's been stated thus far. I've been on the conference the entire time. I do think that for safety, wildlife concerns, the neighborhood that we live in, all of the reasons already mentioned, I'm opposed to it.
Okay, have you ever considered purchasing this corner to continue its use as pasture or common area for the neighborhood?
Yes, and so I can kind of speak to that too. When I purchased the property, yes, I own obviously the 6-acre piece with the barn and then the 26 acres that goes kind of in a U shape around the barns. When I purchased, it'll be 7 years ago in January, it was appraised at $12,000 to $15,000 per acre. It has actually been for sale for around $55,000 per acre. So I would love to buy it. I'm just not going to pay more than triple what the market value was.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And there also was a question about the utilities. So there actually is an impact for the utilities when they were looking at doing the patio homes from I was out the one that's the seller at the time, to be able to get the water, they have to come in from Harry, but because that natural reserve and the floodplain area goes so far over on that parcel that we're discussing, they would have to go through my property to bring water in from Harry. They can't bring it in from 127th Street South. And I told them no.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I got my question answered. Thank you. Any other questions for
Yeah,
this
thank you.
speaker? Okay, thank you very much. Yes,
Just to be fair, I didn't hear anything new, but I would say that since we did allow, out of order, if there's a rebuttal to something that wouldn't already been addressed, that would be fair.
okay.
But I didn't hear any new subject matter, but
Did you hear any, do you want to address anything, Agent? Okay, that you heard. Okay, thank you. Thanks for keeping us fair. All righty, we'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Warren.
I would expect maybe some discussion from this, but I'm going to start the ball with a motion to approve following staff recommendations with the following changes. The item D, setback change from 100 foot to 50 foot, that the maximum height be allowed to be 25 foot, that there would be no outdoor storage.
We have a motion.
second that.
I have a second from Commissioner Johnson. Discussion.
I thought I heard our architect say, or their architect say, 20 feet.
20 foot would be good, but 25 foot, if there's an error or something, I don't want to have a problem come up. That was a cushion.
25 foot, I mean, that's a single-story structure. Every single-family home in the city here has up to 35-foot height that they can go to.
I know that, I just thought I heard him say 20, I might have misunderstood.
Okay. So the motion's for 25-foot maximum height and no outdoor storage.
Are we in the discussion phase yet?
Yes, we have a motion and a second, and we are now discussing that motion and second.
Okay. I'm really concerned about changing the zoning here and opening the door. We talk about precedent-setting cases all the time, and I really don't see the advantage of having a storage unit in this type of an area. They don't add anything to an area, and there seems to be plenty down there. But this does not match or conform to the neighborhood at all, and we have considerable opposition. And according to the golden rules, if we have opposition, we need other elements of the golden rules to go with it, and this does not conform to the character of that area. So I would be opposed.
Other discussion or comments? I think my challenge with supporting the motion, even with those recommendations, yeah, I know we have a second, but to support your motion, I don't know that I can, because my belief is there's plenty of other areas that this development could go. I do also, though, see that this hasn't been developed for a significant number of years, and something else will come in. This is probably the most compatible neighbor there would be in this area. Other things that would be allowed currently. Joe, yes?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this. I remember being on the commission years ago, and we approved a storage unit down there on Central, I think, and 127th, or close to the corner. And I think it's worked out pretty well and unobtrusive. So I haven't decided yet how to vote, but I look back at that. There was a lot of opposition at that time, but it didn't seem like it was any negativity to it over the years.
Okay. Are we ready to Commissioner Williams pay?
Yes, I'd like to say I'm probably opposed to this too. I'd put this in the same category as we do the car washes. There seems to be one on every corner. I think there's more than enough for storage units around this area that we really don't need anymore.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. You had an additional comment, Commissioner Warren?
Just a comment to that, because, and it's a valid one, but at the same time, we have more than enough restaurants, but we have new restaurants come. We have gas stations, but not more than enough gas stations, but we have more gas stations come. That's kind of that's a hard thing. The market dictates what's enough. Somebody thinks that there's a need for this, and who are we to say that they don't have the right to do that? So there's two sides of that coin, but I understand where you're coming from.
All right, I'll call for a vote and let's do a roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Fox?
Nay.
Dool?
Yes.
McKay is absent. Green?
Aye.
Bill Johnson?
Aye.
Blick? Josh Blick?
Aye.
Nix? Foster is absent. Warren?
Aye.
Joe Johnson? Joe Johnson?
Aye.
Miles?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Cunningham?
No.
Williams Bay?
No.
Motion passes. I have 9-3. And thank you all for your testimony.
And we
One abstention? Oh, yes, one abstention. Thank you. 9-3-1.
Damn.
What?
Who was the abstention?
These are very difficult decisions, but we're also looking at the accommodation being made by the developer.
But obviously, none of you have ever driven past that area.
Oh, yes, I believe several of us did and have. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one of the reasons I was really in support of it's got LC all around it. So there's
Limited
already a
commercial,
lot of
right.
stuff that's built that shouldn't
Yeah.
be built in LC, but they got to build it, so.
That was really my catching point, is the fact that there was LC on
All
all
around,
three, all
right.
three corners, and
Well-
anything else could have been developed there at any
Yeah.
time that fell within LC. And
Well, and the visibility from most of the properties is nil, especially with a reduction of height, so,
And technically speaking, the horse barn is a commercial endeavor.
you know. Buy the property next to you if you want to control what happens to it, correct?
If you want justice, get you a dog and name him Justice.
I don't know, that's a lot per acre.
A little for, yeah, that's, yes, sir. Yes, I believe, is somebody still online for the next case? The next case, which is,
Yes.
4.5, located at Broadway and 47th Street South. Do we still have the individual with us who wants to hear this case?
Yes, we're still here.
Okay, thank you for your patience as we allowed the room to clear. And Aaron, will you please provide the staff report?
Erin Bach-Friend with the Planning Department. Con 2022-00040 combined with Zone 2022-00055 is a request for a zone change to LI Limited Industrial from GC General Commercial District, combined with a conditional use to permit wrecking and salvage on a property approximately 0.7 acres in size, generally located on the east side of South Broadway Avenue here, 1/2 mile north of East 47th Street South. Vehicle towing businesses are permitted by right in the LI Limited Industrial District if they are operating as a vehicle storage yard. This site would be operated as a wrecking and salvage operation because they would be storing inoperable vehicles rather than only operable vehicles. And then in the LI Limited Industrial District, wrecking and salvage are permitted as a conditional use, subject to the supplementary use regulations. The first supplementary use regulation does stipulate that wrecking and salvage yards may be approved as a conditional use in LI if they are not abutting an arterial street, expressway, or freeway. The site does abut Broadway Avenue, a 4-lane arterial, and I-235, a freeway, and so therefore the request would require a waiver of that first supplementary use regulation for approval. In regard to the other conditional use, the other supplementary use regulations, the applicant has not stated that they have any issue with complying with those items. You'll see surrounding the site, in the area along South Broadway, properties are generally zoned a mix of LC light commercial and GC general commercial, as well as LI light industrial. Development in this area is a mix of auto-related uses, including vehicle and equipment sales, vehicle towing and storage, and small office and retail uses. So the subject site here abuts the interstate right-of-way to the north. To the south is a property also zoned GC and developed with a vehicle or a boat and equipment sales.
Looks like someone else trying to come in. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So the property to the south is also zoned general commercial and is developed with a Wichita Marine and Boat Sales property. Property to the west on the other side of South Broadway is developed here to the northwest with a vehicle and repair shop, as well as vehicle sales. And then the back portion here that is limited industrial is used as a towing facility. However, there was not a conditional use for this property, and they should not be storing inoperable vehicles. They would be limited to the storing of operable towing vehicles. A brief survey of the subject area did indicate that there are a number of storage and wrecking, or salvage and wrecking, facilities in the area, though they are generally all north of the interstate here. This case is not a reprocessing because it is under a new ownership, but a repeat of one that was submitted in 2015. So both a zone change to LI Limited Industrial as well as a conditional use. The case was submitted to planning staff. However, due to a lack of payment, it was never actually scheduled for a public hearing and did not go to MAPC for a vote. In a review of the staff report that was prepared in anticipation for that meeting, the recommendation was going to be, should have been heard, to deny the request for the following reasons. So first being that this would introduce wrecking and salvage as a new use along South Broadway, south of the interstate here. So while those properties or those uses already exist to the north, they did not previously exist to the south. Second reason being that the requested zoning and conditional use were found to be in non-conformance with the plans and policies that were adopted at the time. Specifically, what was the 2030 Wichita Functional Land Use Guide. And at the time, this area was identified as appropriate for regional commercial development, while wrecking and salvage was classified as a processing industry use. Later that year in 2015, MAPC adopted the Community Investments Plan, which included an updated land use map. And at that time, the subject site and now is categorized as appropriate for both commercial and industrial land uses. And then the last reason that was cited in the previous report was the non-conformance to the South Wichita-Hayesville area plan. So this site is within that plan area. And a specific component of that plan is the recommendation to support the removal of auto-related commercial uses to promote new and additional commercial growth, specifically in the South Wichita-Hayesville plan area. So while this is in conformance with the community investments plan, it is only in partial conformance to the South Wichita-Hayesville area plan. Again, because of that, the note that the removal of auto-related uses should be supported, but then is in conformance with the future land use plan for the South Wichita-Hayesville area plan, which does state the area is appropriate for commercial, retail, and industrial land uses. Staff is recommending that the application be approved, subject to conditions as well as, or those including the supplementary use regulations, with the exception of item 1, which is the waiver of the prohibition of the use being located along an arterial. And that will go through staff photos, the slides. If we can go to the land use map, please. So you can see here that the site is now under the current comp plan designated for commercial and industrial use, so the front part being commercial and then the back portion industrial. Next slide, please. The applicant's proposed site plan shows that this would be the storage area for the site, and the existing office on the property would be used as the office for the wrecking and salvage use. And then there is an existing gate and a fence that surrounds the property. The supplementary use regulations would require that to be screened with a visual density of 95%. So the current chain link fence would need to be replaced and provide that adequate screening there around the site. Next slide, please. So this is a photo of the subject site. Again, you can see where that chain link fence exists, and then a gate that would need to be replaced with a fence that provided adequate screening. Next photo, please. And then again, so the existing fence and gate. Next photo, please. This is facing north from the subject site. This is the area which I previously mentioned being used for the vehicle repairs and sales lot, and then that back portion that is used as a vehicle storage yard. Next photo, please. Again, just another photo of that same site. Next photo, please. This is the property directly south of the subject property. It was previously used for boat sales. However, when driving by, it did not appear that it is operational at this time. Next photo, please. And then this is the strip retail located just west of the site. Next photo, please. And with that, I am glad to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Hearing none, agent or applicant, you have 10.
Sorry, really quick, I did want to state, DAB did hear this case last night, and they did recommend denial.
Okay.
So didn't want to forget to mention that.
All right, thank you. Agent, please state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes to tell us about your project.
My name is Jared Duncan. I live at 710 North Anna. They do keep
Could I
mentioning.
interrupt? I think we should applaud you for your patience. I mean, you've been sitting over there for 4 hours.
I'm gonna make it quick. I just want to tow cars.
All right.
Thank you.
We've been towing in the Wichita area for the last 4 years now. We've been looking for a place. We've came before you guys a few times on a couple different properties that were turned down. This property was presented to me. I know she went through the photos. The property that is directly to the northwest of me is Miller Towing. He's on the same strip. Further down on the other side of 235 is Wichita Towing. Further down is Tow Service. The whole area is where all the tow yards go. It's where they approve it. Wichita Marine did go out of business. I tried to buy that property too. Ended up losing out on that one. So the property that I'm using is not going to be for what they call wrecking and salvage. It's just a tow yard. We're just parking cars there. We're trying to get on the city rotation to work with the Wichita City Police Department. I've got nothing against putting up any screening or any landscaping or anything you guys require to make the area better. I'm all for it. That's all I got for you. Got any questions for me?
Questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Williams Bay.
Did you say that you weren't going to be using it for wrecking and towing?
It's good. No, there's not going to be any salvage. No parting
No
of vehicles.
salvage.
No crushing cars. None of that. Just storage for wrecked cars that we picked up for the police department.
So would you be stacking those vehicles? I mean, are they
No,
wrecked
no,
so
no
bad that
stacking.
you?
Nothing
Okay.
but just whatever we can pick up on the tow truck and drop off in the lot.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Are you gonna change your mind in the future?
If I have to go through another one of these, I might change a profession.
I'm interested in the nature of the DAB concerns for this location where you happen to be present, Commissioner Miles.
So the DAB concerns have to do with, we have a lot of car lots on South Broadway. A lot of car lots, 72. And, well, there is, between 47th and Kellogg, there are 72 car lots. And I think they see, what I heard last night was kind of a continued deterioration of the area as we allow salvages then. And of course, you see here, we've got one that's operating illegally. And I think that does contribute to deteriorating the area more. And it is considered like a least desirable use. So that's really what I heard last night. Of course, I abstained from voting as I always do when it's heard at the DAB, but yeah.
Okay,
I don't think,
I
you
guess
weren't present though, so I think the concerns was about the wrecking and salvage. I'm not sure, and I can't speak for the DAB, but I'm just not sure that they would have had the same concerns if they'd have known it was just for towing.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Warren?
I got a comment, I'll wait for that.
Okay. Any staff comment? No? Is there anyone participating virtually, please, that would like to comment on this case?
Yes, Patrick Phillips, 650 East Gilbert, Wichita.
Go ahead, Mr.
And,
Phillips, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm the new owner of the adjacent property to the south and to the east, the old Wichita Marine. The past few weeks, probably since this has been prepared, we've cleaned that site up immensely. And we were never received notice of this hearing other than the sign this morning. And that's why we're kind of late to the game. We didn't have an opportunity to mail anything in or get on the agenda. But we're trying to clean the area up and reopen it as a commercial venue for sales. We don't know if it'll be auto, we don't know if it'll be boats, but we are cleaning the area up. We have concerns about a salvage tow operation where we're at here in the middle of downtown. There's several salvage yards in place, and it's just totally not with the nature of the business that we're going to go with. And when we bought it at an auction, of course, it was general commercial, and ours was, and the neighboring was. So our opinion is we would prefer not to go that way, because that may hamper our opportunities, and we're trying to clean up the area.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker?
No, but I do want to say, Mr. Phillips, thank you for cleaning that up, because that was quite a mess down there.
Yes, we are civic minded. Like I say, we're here in the downtown area next to All Metals and ABC, and there's just a heavier traffic when you go to salvage and towing.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony and for your patience in waiting for this case. You have an opportunity to, any other virtual speakers? Hearing none, applicant, you have the opportunity to rebut the comments you heard from your neighbor.
Yeah, so As far as all metal and ABC that he's referring to, that's what I'd like to just instill, that we're not salvage, we're not buying scrap, we're not a recycling facility, we're not none of the heavy industrials that he's referring to. We're just towing cars, just like the neighbor across the street.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions for the agent? Then I would bring this back to the commission.
This is Phillips again. I would like to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Now that you've had your opportunity to speak and the agent has responded, we don't accept additional comments.
All right.
Go ahead, Commissioner Warren.
Well, my comment was this, the DAB, looks at this kind of a bad thing. Do we want to have, something that's can be an eyesore spread out over multiple places or kind of located in one area? And my hope is that with new blood coming in, that they'll do a better job of taking care of their properties, and take something that can be a real eyesore and make it less so.
Okay,
I certainly hope so.
Any other comments?
I have a question. What, if you're picking up cars for the police department and they're just going to be stored there until somebody picks them up, how long do you think a car will stay on your lot before it leaves again?
Cars generally set for 2 weeks, 30 days max, and then the city has a public auction that they're auctioned off. Cars aren't sitting there like a salvage for 10, 15 years on end.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right. Commission, what do you want to do?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Green.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Dool. Discussion? I would call for a vote. Do we need roll call? Let's just call for a vote. Ayes in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Hearing none. We have abstention. Were you going to abstain?
No, I abstain. I have always abstained, Dad.
Okay, thank you. All right, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know I shocked you all with that vote, right?
We never try to anticipate the vote of any member of the commission, do we? You never know. All right, we have one non-public hearing item. This is a review of the schedule for next year's meetings. Philip, can you run us through this quickly, please?
Yes, I will run it
You have a
through
copy.
very quickly. You all should have a copy in your packet. Really, we're going to just focus on the subdivision committee hearing and the MAPC/BZA hearing dates. Two touch points I want to make. Overall goal for next year's meeting was shifting the majority of the meetings from a first and third Thursday back to a 2 and 4, the second and fourth Thursdays. This is going to alleviate a lot of the conflicts we've been having as the timing of the MAPC with the timing of the district advisory board meeting. What we've been having a lot this year is that the second meeting of the month for the MAPC was happening about mid-month, and then they were being scheduled for, we couldn't get them on the DAB meeting at the beginning of the month, so they were scheduled for the next month to where it was outside the protest period. There's a lot of conversation of trying to get them closer together. And so moving to a predominantly second and fourth Thursday schedule will better accomplish that to where more often than not, the district advisory board should happen before the protest period is over if it's scheduled for the month after the planning commission on that fourth Thursday. The other thing that I would just like to mention is a unique situation on the June 14th, 2023 subdivision committee meeting. Mr. Green is nodding as to what the heck is going on, and Miss Ann Fox even asked in our meeting this morning. So I talked to Kathy, and then she referred me to Neil, the master of subdivision. So it's related to the Juneteenth holiday, which is the following Monday. So track with me here. This is something based on related to plats and when plats are turned in. So if a closing deadline for either zoning cases or even subdivision item cases is supposed to land on a Monday and there's a holiday on that Monday, we move that closing date to the prior Friday, which you'll see several times on the closing date on the left. A plat closing day or a closing day would have been on June 19th, but that's Juneteenth holiday now. So we move it back to Friday, June 16th. For plats, it's a common practice that they are turned in the day before the closing deadline, because sometimes it just, in terms of Neil's system and structure, that's just generally how it's done. So that meant they would be turned in on the Thursday prior to that, which is when he's processing a lot of them and doing that. So he can't be at subdivision committee and receiving plats at the same time. And so he requested that the subdivision committee date be moved to the Wednesday before that. So that answers that question, just in relation to it's in line to a holiday, and it's when plats are received and his ability to receive those plats and process them ahead of the closing day, which would be Friday the 16th. So that's really the only anomaly on the subdivision committee calendar. One item I will also note is in November of next year, there is no meeting the week of Thanksgiving. That is a change over the last several years. We put a skip week in there, which means we have 3 weeks in between planning commission meetings, which gave us the flexibility to put the subdivision committee meeting the week prior to Thanksgiving and the planning commission meeting the week after Thanksgiving. We often have a subdivision committee meeting on the Wednesday of Thanksgiving week, which is hard to get a quorum and difficulty with possibly people traveling for applicants and agents as well. So we made a concerted effort to get that change in the calendar to avoid that conflict. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any feedback, this is still in draft form. We wanted to bring it before the board today to get any last minute comments or possible changes for us to consider.
Okay, Scott?
Yeah, one quick comment is that we typically have 2 MAPC meetings per month, which leads to a total of 24 meetings in a year. And I just want to point out that this still has 24 meetings, that although we have shifted when those skip weeks would be, we're not slacking, we still have 24 meetings.
We were worried about slacking for sure. I was going to bring that up. All right, yeah.
So this does not need a motion. This was just here for your information. If you had any comments for staff that we need to take back and tweak.
For those of you who have a lot of commitments that happen on a schedule, like they're always the 2nd and 4th, that would be the one you need to really check your calendars and report to the staff if you have a known standing conflict with that shift. Okay? Thank you. I hereby call this closed.
This conference is no
Adjourned.
longer being
Shut
recorded.
off. Ended.